Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, MacPack. It's good to be back with you. It's another episode of On the Move. This is the show where we talk about all sorts of different things. We talk about government, guns, philosophy, natural rights, that kind of stuff. If you have anything on your mind, please feel free to give us a call. The number to the show is 360-450-5625. The MacPack phone lines are open. You can also get us on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. You can message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. While you're over there, feel free to like us. Hit that thumbs up button. All right, so we got a lot of stuff on the agenda today. In the first hour, we're going to be joined by Bill Akins. He's going to tell us his story about how the ATF violated his rights and how the courts essentially just kept shoving his case under the rug. I'm really interested to talk to him about this. I also want to talk about the left, how they are essentially looking for ways to dispute or delegitimize the election results. We've got a lot on this today, lots of stuff to talk about. I'm sure you've seen a lot of this in the news if you've been following the cycle here this week. We're going to talk about the CIA, their claims that Russia has influenced the election, and I also want to mention how Trump has been disputing these claims. And a little later in the show, I want to talk about House Republicans establishing a congressional Second Amendment Caucus. Got some news on that. Additionally, in 2020, we now have Joe Biden talking about how he may potentially run for president again. So we've got an action-packed show. We've got a lot more news here that we're going to get to as well. So please feel free to add your thoughts on everything. Again, we got a chat room on Spreaker. Don't forget to check us out every Sunday. By the way, we broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. It's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We do that on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. We also simulcast at the same time over at Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. You can check us out also on YouthRevolt.org and the405media.com. Certainly appreciate them simulcasting our podcast over there. Anyway, so this whole week has been, I think, incredibly insane here. I'm just watching with a little bit of disgust. I talked about last week how the mainstream media is, their levels of trust from the American people are at all-time lows. And I don't think anybody has any doubt that there is an agenda being pursued here. I'm hearing news agencies saying, maybe we gave the president a little bit too much power, a little bit too much leeway. President Obama, that's what they're talking about. And and now we promise we're gonna do better on that one. We're gonna make up for it now. We're gonna do better. And it has nothing to do with our agenda. We're just recommitting ourselves to the truth. So we're not biased in any way. It doesn't mean that simply because a Republican got into office now that we're suddenly going to really worry about this whole thing called federalism and division of powers and checks and balances, all that stuff. Before, when Obama was in office, you're a racist if you even said something like he's a socialist and that we should try to prevent him from becoming an imperial president. No. Before, you were a racist if you did that. But this time it's different. They're going to be different. So this is why we don't believe the media. This is why we don't trust them. It's no doubt. The only thing that they're doing is pushing their own agenda. This is what it's about. Everybody knows it. You know it. I know it. The American people know it. So I just think it's interesting that they are the only ones that don't get it. They're the only ones that don't understand that the jig is up. We're on to them. We get it. And not all news agencies, by the way. There are some out there, and it's also, by the way, not Not even the bad news agencies out there, the ones that are really biased, like, I'm not going to throw any names out there, Breitbart, but, I wouldn't just call out news agencies like that, Breitbart. There's good news agencies out there, definitely not Breitbart, but there are some good ones. But even in those bad ones, there are some good reporters who will tell the truth. What your job is to filter out through the crap. And there's been a lot of reporting about fake news. Fake news, everyone. There's fake news out there. You better watch out. This could be fake news. You don't know. Okay. So the point is, with all the fake news stuff you're hearing, fake news changed the election, fake news this, fake news that. They're disputing. They're flailing. The left is flailing wildly, trying to get something to stick. How can we dispute this election? How can we do something about this? Oh my God, we can't have Donald Trump as a president of the United States. What are we going to do? It's comical. It's just comical watching them flail. And they're going to do this for, I don't know, probably another 6 months at least before they start realizing that this is it. This is the results. These are the elections. The election's over now. You have to move on. You got to find some real things that you can do. So, instead now they're talking about all sorts of stuff like we're going to get to it later in the show. I won't ruin the surprise. We'll get to it in a second. But yeah, the media. Trump is right about the media being dishonest, but and again, the media is right in some ways about there being fake news out there. But let's point out, you are a free-thinking individual. You're capable of reading information, processing it, and deciding whether or not you trust it. Especially, doing your own research and finding out if it's sourced, if the claims that they make are backed up with sources. Where are they getting their information? Where are they, what is the evidence that they are basing their claims upon? That's really the biggest deal. And that's what I do here on the show. I try to get past just the headline, and unfortunately, that's a real problem in the day of social media. And this is not a problem that I think the government should step in and fix. I'm not advocating for that. I'm not saying that we need to silence fake media or go around shutting down fake media websites. No. By the way, these are real conversations that people are having now about how it can be the government's job, or also they're trying to assign this responsibility to big internet companies like Google to filter out the fake news. Well, that's great. I really want Google deciding what I can see. That's awesome. Let's do more of that. No. I don't know about you guys, but I'm capable of deciding what websites to trust and which ones not to. I'm capable of this. And I think you are too. And look, there are going to be some people out there that click on a news story about how President Obama is a reptilian and he has gills behind his ears, and he's got a second set of eyelids that blink or something in this one video. You can check it out. Take a look at this video. You got to take a look at this video right here because he's got these gills behind his ears. You can totally see it right now. Look, there's some people that are going to fall for that crap. You can't really do much about it. Those are the same people that think that we didn't land on the moon. I don't. Look, don't call me. Don't send me your emails if you think I'm wrong about that. I don't care. All right. I don't care about if we faked the moon landing. All right. Or JFK's assassination. I don't know who did it. All right. That's not what the show's about. Come on, guys. So there's going to be people out there that just hop on to every conspiracy theory, like they haven't seen a conspiracy theory that they didn't like, kind of thing. And that's fine. Let those people do what they're going to do, and let them put out their information all they want. If they want to, send out all their conspiracy theories, let them. Don't silence them. Don't suggest that Google silences them and gets their stuff out of the search results. Don't let them do it. Don't do that. Come This isn't up to Google. This isn't up to the government. This is up to you in your everyday life. This is me. I do this. I filter out my information. You should do the same. It's your responsibility to be well informed and to discern whether or not you should trust a news article or not. And I guess if we're going to talk about that, let's at least arm you with the information of how you can go about sourcing out the article. How can you decide whether or not it's trustworthy? Well, the very first thing, again, is you have to read it. You have to read the article. According to some studies, I don't remember what they were, so I can't really source them out. And for that, you shouldn't trust me on this, folks. All right. In fact, since we're on the line here, why not just I'm gonna? Oh, I just realized I had my keyboard attached to the wrong computer. Okay. Now here we go. Let's go ahead and see here. Study people don't read articles. Let's see if I can find anything on this here, because I remember reading a study about this. Let's see. Here we go. This is Cyber Alert. Let's see if I can find something a little more reputable. I don't know anything about Cyber Alert. Let's go to the Washington Post. At least this is well known. 6 in 10 of you will share this link without reading it, a new depressing study says. Okay, so let's go through. I'm just going to show you, this is what I do to determine if an article is worthy of my time, if I believe that it's true or not. So now they're saying, okay, the article says on a satirical news site in the Science Post published a block of lorem ipsum text under a frightening new headline. 70% of Facebook users only read a headline of science stories before commenting on it. Nearly 46,000 people shared this post, some of them quite earnestly, in an inadvertent example, perhaps, of life imitating comedy. Now, as if it needed further proof, the satirical headlines been validated once again, according to a new study by computer scientists at Columbia University and French National Institute. 59% of links shared on social media have never actually been clicked. In other words, most people appear to retweet news without even reading it. Okay, so here's one thing. Never assume that a website that is a satirical site, is not a satirical site if you don't know it. Make sure you find out information about the site, find out information about the author who's writing this, and then you can also click on the links where they claim that that whatever they're making a claim. Like in this situation, they're saying according to a new study is a link. All right, so I click on the link. It takes me to a website that this looks like a French website or something. I can't read hardly any of this. Online news domains increasingly lie. This is the abstract of the study. Looks like you probably have to purchase this. Let me see if I can click on this. This is a PDF. So you start going down the rabbit holes, trying to find out if you can read this information, where it's coming from, all of this stuff. So HAL is the organization who did this. I don't know who this is. It's going through the abstract here. Okay, so this looks relatively reputable here. This is a study I'm looking. It's got charts. It's got graphs. It's got also. Look, this is. I don't have the time to sit here on the air and read through all this, but it's reputable. This is the kind of stuff that you guys need to do. All right, you go through and you just determine this stuff, and don't try to pick up your news from places you haven't heard of. Like, all right, let me see if I can find something in here that. Let me go like 10 pages back. We'll see what happens 10 pages back. Richhabits.net. So here's one of them. Keep in mind something that says blog in the title. That means in its opinion piece. All right, so it may not be fact based, but it may have correct information and may actually have links to information that you're trying to get and stuff that you can go to their source. So it doesn't necessarily always mean it. I'm just saying you want to try to make sure the source is credible. There's a lot of steps you can find out about this. You can go through to see if your source is reputable. You can use like .edus. Those will have a lot of good information, stuff like that. But anyway, folks, we're going to talk more about this kind of stuff. But when we come back, we're actually going to cut to a commercial break. when we come back, we're going to be joined by Bill Akins, and he's going to tell us about how the ATF violated his rights, and he's got a big story that I think you guys really will want to hear. So you don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bare Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashawurley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. And when we last left, we were talking about fake news and how to tell if a site is trustworthy. Here's on journalism.about.com 8 ways to tell if a website is, or if a, let's see what the title is here. 8 ways for journalists to tell if a website is reliable. Number 1, look for sites from established institutions. Number 2, look for sites with expertise. 3, steer clear of commercial sites. 4, beware of bias. 5, check the date. 6, look at the site's look. What it means in that if a site looks poorly designed and amateurish, chances are it was created by amateurs. Steer clear of that. 7, avoid anonymous authors. And 8, check the links. All right, so at this point we're going to be joined by Bill Akins. Hey, Bill, are you on the line?
I'm here.
Hey, Bill, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Mac. And yourself?
Doing really well. First of all, I just want to thank you so much for joining us on the show here. From our talk on Facebook, you've gone through quite a bit here, and first of all, I just want to give you an opportunity to tell your story. And from what I understand, you actually are in the gun parts business, correct?
In the accessories.
Accessories. Do you have any website information or anything like that you'd like to plug? I'd love to give people an opportunity to talk about what they're doing and give my audience a chance to connect with them.
Well, I don't have a website of my own. I'm a firearms consultant and a dealer for Fostech Outdoors, though, whom I transferred my patent to in 2011, and they sell bump fire stocks based on my patent.
Yes, sir. Okay, so let's go ahead and start from the beginning then.
And you can reach them at fostechoutdoors.com.
Oh, okay, great. So let's start at the beginning. How did you get involved in this situation where the ATF came down on you? What happened? How did it go? And just let us know what from the beginning.
Okay. Well, back in 1996. I got inspired to to try taking a Dremel motor tool and adjusting the stocks on both an SKS rifle and a semi-automatic Mack 90 rifle, which is basically a semi-auto AK-47. And what I did was I relieved the stocks so that the barrel, the receiver, the trigger group, and the magazine could slide to the rear while the stock stayed stationary. The first one I did was the SKS. And then I did the two-piece stock on the Mack 90, which was a little more complicated, but not much. And so that whenever the gun fired, the action would move to the rear, but the stock did not move with it. In other words, it just slid just a little distance, like less than an inch or so, something like that, due to recoil. Well, this removed the trigger from your finger when that happened. And I had inserted, my original ones were isometric, but to me, I thought it was a little better to put a spring in the back of them. So I put a spring in both the firearms so that whenever the action recoiled, removing the trigger from your finger, it compressed the spring and then shoved it back forward. And the reason I put the springs in them, because they were originally isometric, was because the spring was a little more consistent than the human holding it isometrically. So you could do the same thing by the human pressing forward on the action, but it took a little bit of practice. Actually, that's the way they are now today. Mm-hmm. But originally, that's the way I made it, but I felt that it was a little more consistent to have the spring and not have to rely on human muscle tension.
So for the benefit of the audience, can you explain, because I know what it is, but I just would like an expert to explain what a bump fire is for everybody who's maybe not familiar with this.
Okay, sure. A bump fire stock, so see, according to the unconstitutional National Firearms Act of 1934, and as amended in 1968, it, for all practical purposes, unless you have deep pockets, removed the ability to own a fully automatic weapon from the American citizen. Now, yes, you could still own one, but you had to pay a $200 federal transfer tax. You had to get an FBI background investigation check. You had to wait for the ATF to process all this, and then finally, you would get your registration that allowed you to own one. Well, this also, since they also created a law, which since 1986 says that you can't own, even as a civilian, you cannot own any fully automatic weapon that has been made after 1986 unless you're a special occupational taxpayer. So that means an SOT. That means you have to become an FFL first, and then you can become an SOT after becoming an FFL, and then you can make your own fully automatic weapons if you want, but you can only keep them for yourself, transfer them to another SOT, or transfer them to law enforcement or the military. So the laws unconstitutionally became very, very restrictive. And I saw that there was a way that you could legally take a semi-automatic firearm, and the controlling factor in the law is one shot per single function of the trigger. That makes it a semi-auto, not a fully auto. So I thought, well, okay, by making it recoil back to the rear, removing the trigger from your finger, that's one shot, okay? And then whenever the trigger is pushed back into your finger again, that's another separate shot. Each time a separate function of the trigger, whether you're using a spring to make it return or whether you're using human isometric tension. And I submitted this to the ATF. I invented it in 96 and got a patent on it in 2000, received my patent from the U.S. Patent Office, and submitted this to the ATF twice. I partnered up with another individual, and he submitted an example of it to the ATF. The ATF wrote us back and said that it did not constitute a machine gun. And but we were a little concerned that, and we also knew that the ATF is famous for giving some ambiguous language to people in what is known loosely as a approval letter. And so we wanted it to be a little more plainly stated, because they said that although we submitted the example and it was fine when we submitted it, they said that some screws dislodged, and then they taped them back to the stock. Actually, they said they broke off, but when we received the sample back, the screws were in perfect condition, and they had just been unscrewed from their threads, even though the letter said that they had broken. And so the letter said that it was not a machine gun, but we wanted to make sure that it wasn't a machine, that they were saying it wasn't a machine gun, not because it didn't operate, but it wasn't a machine gun because of its method of operation. So we recontacted the gentleman at the technical branch of the ATF and asked him if he could please clarify that. And he did. And so we received a second letter from the ATF saying that he fully understood its method of operation and that it was not a machine gun due to its method of operation. And so based upon that, now remember, we have 2 letters of approval from the ATF. We go into manufacture and production, spend a great deal of money making molds, and the molds cost $70,000+ for the molds. And we decided to make it for the Ruger 1022 first, with plans later to make it for the SKS rifle and the AK-47 versions, semi-auto only versions, everything being semi-auto, of course. And so as soon as we started manufacturing it, the stock for the Ruger 1022 rifle, which worked the same way that I previously described, it had a spring in it. Basically, again, when you fire, the barrel, the receiver, the trigger group, the magazine, that all recoils back just a little short distance, but the stock stays stationary, so it doesn't move. So previously, you could bump fire. It was a technique that's been known for decades, where you can basically stick your thumb in your belt loop, hold the gun down by your side, and the whole gun kind of rocks back. But if you practice a little bit, you can pull forward with your left hand on the forend, and you can make it sound like it's fully auto. It simulates full auto fire while not being fully automatic. But that was highly inaccurate. So what my invention did was enabled it to be fired accurately because the stock stayed stationary in your shoulder. So we started producing it, and as soon as we started producing it, the director of the ATF, I believe his name was Michael J. Sullivan, or he was the acting director. He never was confirmed. He rescinded. I mean, nothing in the law changed. We still had our 2 approval letters, but like Caesar of old, or Pharaoh, he just has his people send us a letter saying that inasmuch as there were any letters to the contrary, they are hereby rescinded. And then we were contacted by the ATF, and at first they wanted us to turn in all our inventory to them, and this is a standard tactic that they use on people a lot. If there's something they don't like, they will give you an approval letter, and they will let you go to production and spend a great deal of your money doing that. And then once you actually start selling it, they'll turn around and rescind your approval letter with a big grin on their face, because they made you waste hundreds of thousands of dollars in designing, producing, manufacturing your item, only to crush you with a Caesarean edict that says, oh, we changed our mind, and there's no accountability on their part. So they, under threat of prosecution, which is quite substantial for manufacturing a machine gun without the special registration, we were threatened, even though we disagreed with it, we were threatened that we had to turn in everything at first. So we got one of the leading firearms attorneys in the country to contact the ATF and try to reason with them. Well, that didn't work out very well. Oh, wow. And they dug in their heels, but they did say that, well, you can just turn in all the springs and they came up with a ruling, and this is where it gets really weird. Their ruling was that the spring causing the action to go back forward initiated a sequence of fully automatic fire, even though your finger was functioning the trigger for each and every shot. So we had to turn in our springs, or else, and they also, another thing they made us do, which was not our job, and I disagreed with my partner, and I won't mention any names, but I had a partner who went right along with everything they wanted to do against my wishes, and he also turned over our customer list to the ATF, which they demanded, but was not required, because at the time that we were selling them, they were legal, according to the ATF. It was only after they rescinded our letters of approval that they said that they were illegal. So at the time we were selling them, they were no different than a binocular or a knapsack or anything else that was a non-machine gun. So we did not have to give them our customer list, but my partner insisted that we did, because he had several other firearms companies, and he was afraid that if he didn't jump and hop to everything the ATF wanted him to do, that they would harass him with his other firearm companies, and basically he just was kind of throwing our company under the bus so that his other companies would not be harassed. Well, since I own 50% of the company and my partner owned 50% of the company, I could not go against his wishes until later on, when there was a problem with some finances that I uncovered, and I had to threaten to sue him for basically embezzling, and then he left the company, and I became the last officer of the company. So at that point in time, I dissolved the corporation, had an attorney make me the executor of the company, and able to sue in the company's name. So at that point in time, I took the remaining assets of the company, and I engaged an attorney to file suit in civil court against the ATF. Now, what the ATF did that was so egregious is they violated not only my rights under the 1934 and 1968 Gun Control Acts, as well as my Second Amendment rights, but they also violated my rights under the Administrative Procedures Act, which states that any time a federal agency wants to institute a new ruling, and this became a new ruling, ATF even posted it at their website as a new ruling. And anytime there's a new ruling by any federal agency, they fall under the Administrative Procedures Act, where there's supposed to be hearings that I should be privy to, because anyone that would be affected adversely or otherwise by this new ruling is supposed to have a hearing. There's supposed to be a period of time for the public to submit their comments and their opinions into the ATF. Well, the ATF did none of that. They just said, turn them in or we're going to prosecute you. And they also made my partner, I didn't like it, but he did it, sent out a letter to all of our customers telling them that they had to send in their springs to the ATF as well. And then we had to turn in all the springs. I mean, he actually took bags of springs and sent them in to the ATF, of springs, just springs that you could use on a lawnmower or a carburetor. In fact, he threw away bags of springs also, just because he didn't want them at his location, because he was afraid of the ATF coming in saying they have also this doctrine that they use called readily convertible. So if you had one of the stocks, and even if you didn't have a spring installed in it, if he had any springs there at his location and he put them into his stock, they could possibly claim that he had parts available to readily convert something to a machine gun. So anyway, this went on for a while with him holding me up from suing the ATF because he did not want to be harassed. But like I said, once I discovered there was some discrepancies with the funds of the corporation, and he resigned voluntarily and sent me some nasty letters. And still, there's still $1,200 that I don't know what happened to. and he's the only one that had access to it from the corporation that's missing. But I did not go after him. I was after bigger fish. So I had to travel. I had to fly to Oregon and go to a storage facility where our molds and all of our inventory was, because I live in Florida, so I had to travel all the way across the country to Oregon. I had to rent a big box truck, load it in the rain, and drive for 6 days, sleeping on the front seat of that truck all the way, because there wasn't enough funds left to pay for hotel rooms and things like that, and I wanted to also save what funds there were for paying an attorney. So I was down to a shoestring. So I basically drove and slept in the truck all the way across country to bring the inventory and everything that was left from Akins Group, Inc. back to Florida. Once I got back here, I found an attorney that was a really great guy, John Monroe, and he's out of Georgia, and he's quite active, or he's retired now, but he was quite active in pro-firearm cases. And so he's a Second Amendment defender. And he actually took my case basically pro bono, but I also promised that if anything happened to where I ever received any sort of money from my patent, that I would give him 10% of it. And I did that later. So I took care of him eventually, financially. But at the time, it was so nice that he would do that because nobody else would take my case. Mm-hmm. So he filed suit for me in district court here in Florida, and it went before a Clinton appointee judge. Well, that should preface for you right there what was going to happen. And the judge just completely ignored the fact that the ATF violated the Administrative Procedures Act, that I was supposed to receive a hearing and the public was supposed to have time to submit opinions and comments. He just ignored it. Ignored the fact that it was one shot per single function of the trigger. Ignored that. The ATF came in with arguments saying it was a danger to public safety. And even though it was still semi-auto. But later on, when they came out isometric without the spring, there was nothing said by the ATF. There was nothing. There was no threats of charges brought or anything to myself. Or there were many different infringers on my patent. I won't name any names, but there was nothing said to anybody else about that when they did it isometrically. So if mine went rat-a-tat-tat because it had a spring in it that made the action go back forward after recoil, and the other people, the only difference was they didn't use a spring, they used their tension of their arm pressing forward on the forend to do the exact same thing, what was the difference in the public safety? But see, at that particular time that this was going in front of the judge, the isometric ones were not being proliferated. They weren't being manufactured and sold by infringers. Like I said, I had originally made my first two that way, but that isn't the way that I had produced it when the ATF shut us down. But my point is that if it goes rat-a-tat-tat, if it's isometric, or if it goes rat-a-tat-tat with a spring, there's really not any difference in the cyclic rate of fire. It's still the same speed, even though it's being done in a semi-automatic mode. But the ATF said nothing about it being a public safety hazard when they were done isometrically, only when it was being done with a spring, because at that time, they had no clue that it could be done isometrically. And they just basically wanted to shut this down, because what it did, it was a paradigm shift. The ATF saw this as a threat, because, see, they are a cash cow that receives $200 transfer tax from every person that wants to own a fully automatic weapon. Mm-hmm. And my invention threatened that very cash flow, because it could simulate full auto fire without any special registration of any kind. So it was a big shift for them, and I think they just basically freaked out when I invented this. And their tech person that first approved it twice in writing, he was let go from the ATF, and yeah, he was eventually let go or just left. I'm not sure how or what happened about that. But after he was gone from the tech branch, that's when they came out and said that it was a machine gun and they were hereby rescinding their 2 previous approvals. Now, one would think that since it was their mistake, if in fact it was a machine gun, which it wasn't, one would think that they would be responsible to pay me for their mistake, the hundreds of thousands of dollars for all the money that had been put into this, and then suddenly they go, oops, we changed our mind, with nothing in the law whatsoever changing. One would think that, but that isn't the way it works.
Yeah,
what we have here...
There's no way that they'd willingly admit fault in that. That would be something that you'd handle through the civil suit, which you did, right?
Right, and so first we took it to federal district court, and again, it was a Clinton appointee judge, and he just ignored everything that they did. He took their argument that it was a danger to public safety, typical liberal legislating from the bench, okay? And so it was almost a foregone conclusion, you know. I mean, I never even got my day in court. He found against my company on summary judgment. I did not even get to go into court. It was just papers flying back and forth from the ATF's attorneys and my attorney to the court, and then one day my attorney calls me and says the judge had dismissed my case on summary judgment, so I never even got to go to court to prove my case. They didn't want me to prove it. Wow. It's like Donald Trump says, the fix was in. So we appealed. We appealed to the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. And again, a court that was Clinton appointees, only difference was it was a 3-judge panel instead of 1 judge. They did the exact same thing. They rubber-stamped everything the ATF did, even though the ATF violated federal law on various different counts. They violated 1 shot per single function of the trigger of both the 34 and the 68 Gun Control Acts, okay, which in themselves violate the Second Amendment. And the biggest thing was they violated the Administrative Procedures Act. And when my attorney argued that, they just didn't think that was that important. Can you imagine? Well, I'm sure you can. I watched your all the videos on your trial, so yes, I know you can imagine. I guess that's a rhetorical statement to the rest of your audience.
Yes, sir.
So they did the exact same thing to me that the first judge did, okay? Mm-hmm. It didn't matter. In other words, it just did not matter.
Yep.
If you're a federal agency and you break the law, it doesn't matter. So the next thing we did is we petitioned the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, the big one. And they didn't grant certiorari, which we knew there was a slim chance they would, because the Supreme Court usually doesn't grant 95% of the cases that are brought to it.
Yeah.
And unless you have a huge movement behind you, or a senator or a congressman or somebody behind you, they won't. But unless it's something that they feel is a gigantic movement and something that's pertinent to the whole country, they won't. And plus, you have quite a few liberals on the Supreme Court anyway. So that's what happened. And so when it doesn't get taken by the Supreme Court, that reverts it back to the previous ruling, which was the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the injustice stands to this day. And but what happened is I went back. After that, of course, I was completely obliterated financially, and both financially, mentally, physically, emotionally, you know, with this injustice. I mean, it was just so wrong. It completely destroyed mine and my partner's company.
I'll bet.
But at least I didn't take it laying down. You know, he held me up a year and a half from being able to sue the ATF. But finally, and when he left the company voluntarily, that left me as the last officer, and I took what was left. I said, I'm going to take what's left and see if I can get somebody to help me with this injustice. And I found one man to do that, and that was John Monroe, who is today a retired attorney in Georgia. And at least we went down fighting. But what was so sad and what's so disgusting and frustrated is it seems like when it comes to suits against the government, that the law doesn't matter when it comes to them. It only matters if you or I do it. It's similar to the whole country knows Hillary is guilty as hell. Everybody knows this. Okay, they've got the proof. They could prosecute on various different federal charges, and they just won't do it. And it was the same thing in my case. The ATF violated my rights under the Administrative Procedures Act. That alone should have been a major issue for the justices on both courts. They acted like it was no big deal. In fact, the ATF told the court in the dicta of my case, they said that their letter to me telling, or to my company, to cease and desist was my hearing.
Jeez. Wow.
And this is supposed to be a hearing where you have input from the public. There's a certain length of time that it's supposed to you're supposed to be able to have input from the public, and I was supposed to be able to engage in a hearing, offer up my own arguments of why this was wrong. I was never given that opportunity, and the ATF said that was my hearing when he sent me the cease and desist letter.
This is like
it was just.
This is like when police investigate themselves and they find that they've done no wrongdoing. This is essentially the same thing. The federal government determines that your case isn't worth hearing, so they kick it back.
Well, when you've had an infringement on the people's Second Amendment rights dating from 1934 and then amended in 1968, and then you have another one that was passed in 86 saying that there can be no new machine guns made by anyone unless, like I explained earlier, they're first an FFL, Federal Firearms Dealer, and then later become an SOT. They have to go through 2 stages, and then you have to pay like $500 a year to maintain that license. And if you ever drop your license and don't maintain it and keep paying in that money, you have to turn over your fully automatic weapons that you built or acquired to the ATF, or you can give them to another SOT, the military or law enforcement. So basically what you've got is you've got the people in this country today that do own fully automatic weapons, and by the way, there's almost no crime done by people who are registered and legally own fully automatic weapons.
Not according to liberals, though. Liberals out there will tell you that every single mass shooting was done by a fully automatic assault weapon. And
of course, and an assault weapon by the U.S. military manuals, it has to have a selector switch that enables it to switch from semi-automatic fire to full automatic fire. In fact, it originally came out in translations of the German manuals from World War II, where they were discussing some of the very first Sturmgewehrs, the STG-44, things like that, and they were instructing our soldiers on these weapons if they came into contact with them on the battlefield about how they were able to be switched from semi-auto to full auto. Because during World War II, most of our guns were the M1 Garand, which was semi-auto only, or the Thompson submachine gun, which usually was fully auto all the time, and just like the M3 grease gun was full auto all the time. So when they came into contact with what was actually the grandfather of the very first so-called assault weapons, and that is, by the way, a term that has been made up. They said that Adolf Hitler called it a Sturmgewehr, which equates to a storm rifle, and so they equated that to assault weapon. It really doesn't exist. It's a term that the liberals made up because if you're going to call it a Sturmgewehr, Gewehr means rifle, Sturm means storm. If that means storm rifle, Well, how do you get assault weapon from storm rifle? Okay, it's something the liberals made up to scare people because it sounds. See, the word assault goes along with the term assault and battery, and so to assault someone sounds like an illegal action, and most of the time it is, unless you're assaulting them in defense of yourself. But most of the time, in legal terms, when you hear someone's been charged with assault and battery, they just punch somebody, and attack them. So it gives a bad connotation to the term, to assault, okay? And so they took that term and they applied it to any firearm that they didn't like the looks of, regardless of whether it was semi-auto or not.
Exactly. It has absolutely nothing to do with the function of the weapon. It's all about cosmetic looks. We even have Elizabeth Warren, who's come out and said it's just an easy way for them to demonize firearms, and this is just one easy way that they can do to get people to get on their side. And we had like Whoopi Goldberg on The View talking about how you don't need an assault rifle. I'm using air quotes here to hunt. She says you just spray and there's nothing left, and then there's nothing left to eat from what you've hunted. It doesn't make any sense. She doesn't even know what she's talking about, first of all, and second of all, the AR-15 is the most commonly used hunting rifle in the world today. So it just shows their ignorance on the subject. They conflate every single gun out there to an assault weapon, even though they're talking about semi-automatic rifles. That's all they're talking about.
Exactly. But see, the problem is you've got people that don't know anything about firearms that are acting like they're experts on it, and they're not. I mean, when they don't understand the difference between an M16 fully automatic, well, actually select fire. The M16 was select fire, because I'm an old ex-Marine. I know these things. But the AR-15 is not select fire. Now, for your listeners that don't know what select fire means, that means there's a little lever on the gun that it has one position for semi-automatic fire, and then you can turn the little lever to another position, and it will go full auto, as long as you hold the trigger down. Well, in my invention, you didn't hold the trigger down. It functioned once separately for each and every shot fired, but the ATF claimed it was a machine gun. And two liberal courts, one being a liberal judge, a Clinton appointee in the federal district court, and then on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, a three-judge panel, again, Clinton appointees, they all just went right along with the ATF, just went right along with them, violated my rights, thought it was no big deal that the ATF had violated the Administrative Procedures Act. No punishment against the ATF for violating the Administrative Procedures Act, and sent me a summary judgment in both instances, and I never received a penny of remuneration for the... I'll tell you what the ATF did do. They apologized, and I went to all my senators. I went to both my senators and to my congressperson. Well, one of my senators is a flaming liberal, so he did nothing for me, of course. In fact, the staff at his office was less than helpful. In fact, they were kind of antagonistic towards me. So that was Senator Nelson. I went to my other senator, and he wrote a letter, but it didn't do anything. Then I went to my congressperson, and she listened. I actually went to see her in person. She actually sat down with me and listened, and I told her what happened. Well, her name was Jenny Brown Waite. She at least wrote a letter to the ATF, and they wrote her back, and they apologized for their mistake of approving twice in writing my device in the first place, and that was a mistake, and they apologized for it. Well, their apology did not help the hundreds of thousands of dollars that I lost, the destruction of my company, mine and my partner's company. But I guess everything's okay because they apologized, even though they violated my rights on various different levels, and obviously violated the Administrative Procedures Act, and there was absolutely nothing done to that. It kind of leaves you with the feeling that when a wolf robs the hen house, you have no one to go to but wolves to complain about another wolf robbing the hen house. And how do you think that investigation and that kangaroo court is going to go?
Exactly. Yeah. Look, I'm real sorry this happened to you. What really sucks is that there's really nothing that was done to compensate you for the mistake that they supposedly made. Unfortunately, I think the real mistake here is the violation of our right to defend ourselves. And I mean, the mere fact that there is a ban on full automatic weapons in the first place, that the government should be getting involved in that, when the Constitution's very clear. It doesn't say that, you have a right to carry a semi-automatic gun, you have a right to have a revolver, you have a right to protect your home. It says you have a right to bear arms.
Well, I've memorized it, and what it says, and I quote, "A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed." Now, if you look up the word infringed in Webster's dictionary, it says it is an encroachment upon a right or a privilege. Well, since our forefathers said that these rights came from our Creator, we are endowed by our Creator with certain unalienable, not inalienable, but unalienable rights. If you look up the word unalienable, it says something that cannot be taken away. But they do. See, what happened is after the taming of the West and all the lions and the tigers and the bears were pacified and they destroyed the Indian culture and killed all the buffalo and we got railroad from the east all the way to the west, then the bankers and the weasels moved in. And the Rothschilds decided they wanted to control the people of our country the way they had been controlling the people of England since the 1600s. Baron de Rothschild instituted the Bank of England, and he convinced the monarchy of England to turn over the treasury of England to him, where previously you would have all the gold and jewels and everything in the Tower of London, and the king would have a treasurer, and if the count came out wrong on an inventory, it was off with your head, who wants to be the next treasurer? Well, actually that worked pretty good, but they convinced him that they could make him more money by turning over the treasury of England to this foreign banking consortium that had been started by Baron de Rothschild and his sons, which he had also made financiers and sent out into the world to create this huge empire. Well, I know this sounds like a tinfoil hat conspiracy, but it's not. It's the truth. A lot of people will be like, "What are you talking about?" Well, look it up. Look it up, folks. Look it up. The Rothschilds then created the World Bank, and they also created the non-existent, it only is a fictitious name, so-called Federal Reserve. Well, there's nothing federal about it. It's not part of our government. It is a foreign-owned banking institution, and every time we try to audit them, and Congress tries to have hearings and audit them, the head of the Fed says, "You don't have any authority over us. You can't even audit us. We're a private organization that's not part of your government."
And most of the time,
and every time it gets shut down.
Most of the time, our representatives in Congress won't even let us take a vote on auditing the Fed. But Bill, we're going to have to run here in a second. I got to ask one question before we do. Do you think that gun laws make us any safer? Any gun laws out there at all?
No, because criminals don't follow laws.
Dude, I completely agree with you on that. And for me, I have been on this bandwagon now where I'm trying. I'm just trying to get my friends who are, pro Second Amendment supporters, to get on board with repealing all gun laws, because they absolutely do not keep us any safer. The only people that it affects is law-abiding citizens, who, by definition, you didn't have to worry about in the first place. So,
exactly, and we have several preclusions to, or actually we have several ways that we can open carry in my state, in Florida, if you're in the process of going to, engaged in, or returning from hunting, fishing, or camping. But if you try to do that, you will be arrested, and then you have to go to court. And what they do is they take you on the financial journey. You eventually get exonerated because you have the law showing that. But you have to get an attorney, you have to bail out of jail, you have to post bond, and they do this to intimidate people not to exercise their rights, even though those rights are actually unconstitutional in the law to begin with. You should be able to open carry all the time. But in Florida, there's 3 exceptions to the prohibition against open carry. Like I said, hunting, fishing, or camping, going to, engaged in, or returning from any of those activities. But just try it and find out what happens. There's many, many instances where people have been arrested. They go to court. The judge has to let them go. But they, just like they did to you, they take you on the financial journey. They put you through the threat of prosecution, threat of going to jail, and they basically hit you in the pocketbook. And even when you win, you lose because you don't get reimbursed for the money from your attorney.
Absolutely. Yeah,
and I mean, you've been through it. You know what this game is.
Since this happened to me, I've been saying that the punishment is in the process. They don't even have to win in order for you to lose. They just have to drag your name through the mud, make you take time off of work, coming in to do their little kangaroo court, and then you're losing out on money then, in addition to all the court fees and paying your lawyer and all that stuff. The punishment
And they
itself,
have unlimited funds.
Exactly.
They have unlimited funds.
Yeah, the punishment in the process. And now, for example, for me, like I end up winning an appeal, but I couldn't carry because I wouldn't have been able to qualify to get a concealed carry permit. And if I would have open carried again, who's to say that I wouldn't just be arrested on some ridiculous charges again? So in all likelihood, I mean, they really did just chill my Second Amendment right, because I couldn't realistically carry without fear of going to jail. Oh, by the way, especially after I was unlawfully convicted, I was on probation for a year, unreporting probation, where if I so much as jaywalk and get a ticket, I can go to jail for a year. So,
but that's all been removed now that you won your appeal, right?
Yeah, but unfortunately, here's another little doozy that I'm having to deal with now. Even though I won my appeal, the way that the systems on background checks propagate, it doesn't necessarily go to all the systems when you win an appeal. So now I have this conviction on my record that when my name is run on a background check, people will find, but they don't seem to find that I won an appeal. So then
how coincidental, huh?
Yeah, it's very nice when you get put on a waiting list, or you get told when you're applying for a job that that now you have to prove that you won that appeal, and you got to jump through even more hoops, and now you just look bad when you're telling your employer that you weren't convicted of anything, and now they think you're a liar because.
And what would happen if you sued for them not taking your name off those lists?
Yeah, see, I'm actually right now. I'm in the process of the civil suit. So this. If you think that a criminal case takes a long time, then civil case is just the same. I've been dealing with this since 2013, June 2013, and
of course they'll have excuses. Their excuses will be, well, we're so understaffed, we're just overloaded. Mm-hmm. We try to coordinate with the other agencies, but sometimes things just get lost in the shuffle, and the judge will usually let them off, because you got to remember, the judges and law enforcement are all part of the same system, and we're the outsiders. They have this us against them attitude, and they want to disarm us. The federal government has been trying to disarm us for a long time, because they know, and the Rothschilds, who control our federal government through our banks and through our finances, they know that the only way that they can ever take over our country with their full-blown globalization and communism, which are both in bed together these days, thank God for Donald Trump, but they know that the only way they're ever going to be able to fully take America over is to disarm the people. And that's why they want to do that. They want us all to be good little slaves with a barcode that says property of the Rothschilds on our forehead or in the palm of our hand. The mark of the beast, basically. And without me being a Bible thumper, even though I am an ordained minister, I believe in that. I believe that is something that they're pushing towards. And our government is controlled by the banksters of the Federal Reserve, which goes back to the Rothschilds, who own the World Bank, the Bank of England, and the Federal Reserve, and they own half the wealth of the entire planet. And I know this sounds like a conspiracy tinfoil hat thing, and, well, Bill's really out there. No, I'm not out there. I've done a lot of study. But the problem is most Americans don't. Until this happens to you personally, and when I say you, I mean the collective you of everyone out there. Until it happens to you personally, you don't understand. And you understand because it happened to you. I understand because it happened to me. But the average individual who owns a revolver and maybe one gun, one hunting rifle and one revolver, and, you know, they go to the range once in a while or they might go deer hunting, they don't understand until it happens to them. And you mentioned Whoopi Goldberg. Mm-hmm. People like her and the liberals in general, Chuck Schumer, Hillary Clinton, people like that, they don't seem to want to, well, even if they understand it, of course they don't want to say that the Second Amendment is not about deer hunting. The Second Amendment was instituted by our forefathers so that, and they made this very clear in the Federalist Papers, which again, most people won't take the time to go read. Mm-hmm. Our forefathers expounded further in detail upon why they wrote certain things into our Constitution in the Federalist Papers. They explained these things. And they said that the reason for this was so that no foreign power or internal power could ever take over and institute tyranny as long as the people were armed.
You know,
and that's exactly why there's certain evil forces out there that want to disarm us in any way they can. Lies, misinformation, indoctrination, propaganda, calling an AR-15 semi-auto an assault weapon when it can't be because it doesn't have a selector switch. Mm-hmm. Any way they can to take away our Second Amendment rights and to try to indoctrinate see, all they have to do is win with one generation. If they and they've been doing this and infiltrated our educational institutions from kindergarten through college. 99% of your professors are liberals, and it's just the way it is. Joe McCarthy tried to warn us in the 50s and the early 60s about the communist threat that was infiltrating our society and trying to take us over slowly and incrementally from within rather than with bullets on the battlefield. And it's happened. And thank God, I'm hoping the pendulum is going to start swinging the other way now that we have a true patriot finally that's going to be taking residency in the White House. But still, they're never going to stop. And it goes back to Thomas Jefferson's words, the tree of liberty must from time to time be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And I truly believe that if this continues generationally, and it's never going to stop, they're not, even though we get a patriot in there for 4 or 8 years, they'll come back again later. And we're just setting them back somewhat on their goal. So this is an ongoing battle between good and evil. And until people become informed and understand what their Second Amendment says, until they get involved with pro-Second Amendment and pro-gun organizations, you know, it's just going to keep incrementally chipping away at our freedoms until one day we're going to be like England or Australia.
So, hey, Bill, I got to cut to a commercial break. I'm a little bit over right now.
Sure.
I'd
I'm
actually
sorry.
like to. No, it's not a big deal. I'm actually interested in talking with you more about this. Would you be willing to stick with me through the break?
Sure.
Okay, great. All right, we'll be right back after this break, folks. You don't want to go anywhere. I just kind of I want to go a little further into this conversation. I'd like to talk with Bill about his thoughts on Donald Trump and just this election in general. I want to move into some of our featured topics here and talk about the CIA, the issue with the CIA and Donald Trump, how the CIA is saying that Russia reportedly influenced this election. So you guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this message.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On The Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On The Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Broadcasting from deep within the heartland of free America, where liberty still shines bright. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. Welcome to the second hour of On the Move with Mack Worley. We're on the line right now with Bill Akins. Hey, Bill, you still there?
I'm still here, Mac.
All right, so let me just give you a little bit heads up here, folks. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump. We're going to be talking about Donald Trump's recent, controversy with the CIA. The CIA is claiming that Russia influenced the election, and Donald Trump has been disputing this claim. And Bill, first of all, I just want to let you know, I'm not a supporter of Donald Trump. I didn't vote for the guy. I personally think he's a progressive, and it's okay if we disagree on that. I can tell that you're a big fan of Donald Trump, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I just want to let you know, put everything out in the open. I'm not a fan of Trump, but I do hope that he does things to shrink the size, scope, and influence of the federal government. That's what I hope he's going to do. But I don't put a lot of faith in him because of his pretty long track record and more importantly, the things that he's currently advocating for, like more redistribution of wealth programs and protecting, Social Security and welfare, and expanding, the federal government size, scope, and influence. These are the things that I'm hoping that he doesn't do. But with respect, I understand that you think that he's going to be good, and you mentioned that you think he's a patriot, right?
Well, I do, and the reason I do is sometimes Donald puts his foot in his mouth like any normal person does. He's not a politician. And in a way, I kind of like that because it shows me that he's just another regular guy that came up through the ranks of construction, and he's more of a regular person than the groomed politician that always says exactly the right thing, but makes promises to us, and then turns around and doesn't come through with their promises. And I've gotten a little bit tired of that, and I'm 63 years old, and I've been around a long time. Yes, and my first election I ever voted in was for Richard Nixon. I mean, I was in the Marine Corps as they were bringing the troops back from Saigon, and I saw, what we had said to the North Vietnamese, that we were going to put our troops right back in if they came across the border, and then we didn't do it. I've seen so many promises made by both Republicans and Democrats alike, and they were not carried through. I remember "Read My Lips, No New Taxes" by Bush Sr.
Yes, sir.
I've seen so much corruption in my life on both sides, but I have to say that the reason that I am a Republican is because the Republicans do, generally speaking, even though sometimes it isn't done in practice by certain individuals, the Republican Party as a whole, generally speaking, is for smaller government. Just like Ronald Reagan said, the most dangerous phrase in the English language is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." That's when you need to run.
Yeah.
And leave us alone and we'll be just fine. I mean, there has been so many regulations put upon us since 1900. It's not even funny. I mean, my grandfather used to tell me, he was born in 1898, and he used to tell me about how he used to drive the old early cars with no driver's license, no tag, and we didn't have all these taxes on every single thing that we have today. And the country flourished. We did fantastic. We were an industrial nation that produced like crazy. We fed the world. We free trade with all nations, entangling alliances with none was Thomas Jefferson's statement. Well, of course, I recognize that today the world has shrunk, and you can't be quite as what is the word? The old Monroe Doctrine, 44-40 or fight. You can't be quite as you can't just keep everything in the U.S. anymore. You have to deal with foreign countries, and I recognize the reality of that. So although I salute Thomas Jefferson, that was in his time. Our time has changed. Now, the liberals would take that statement saying, well, if you believe that, then you also believe that the times have changed and you shouldn't have guns that can spray and kill multiple people, Well, okay, so you got your 10-round magazine, that's what you want, 10 rounds? Well, people will just carry 50 of them, I mean, what's the difference? It takes like a half a second to change a magazine in a firearm. So, like you said earlier, criminals are never going to abide by the law. The law-abiding will, because there's something inside a person that tells them when something's wrong. Criminals don't have that. They don't have a conscience. It's all about them. A law-abiding person does, and even if the laws weren't in place, even if we had no laws at all, and it was just total anarchy, you don't step on a kitten's head. You don't punch a 2-year-old. I mean, there's just certain things inside a human being where you know what is right and you know what is wrong.
So,
and
Bill, let me just interject here real fast, because you've said a lot that I do agree with, and some that I don't necessarily agree with. But one of the 3 points that you made here about Trump, you said that he's not a politician, which I guess after this election we can't say anymore. He is going to be a politician now. So
yes, he will be now.
Yeah,
he will have to be. He's forced to be.
And you mentioned corruption, which obviously I'm with you on that. I'm not for corruption in politics. And moreover, I think that the power of political office breeds corruption, which is why I think these people should get additional scrutiny. They should,
I agree.
I think serving in public office, in my opinion, our politicians should have less privacy than average citizens, because we need to know what they're doing in order to consent.
Well, one good thing he's going to do, Mac, is he's going to make it illegal to where when a politician resigns from his office, he isn't going to be able to become he's not going to be able to.
Yeah,
right. They'll be a lobbyist for other companies, and because see what happens is
I think you and I are probably going to be in agreement on this, and we don't really have to harp on it too much. I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about this one particular issue, but
sure,
I'm in agreement that if you take office, you have this power that you're now given, and we bestow it upon you as a politician to act on our behalf. I don't think it's a right thing for that politician to do, to then take that power, give special business-related favors to people while they're in office, and then carry that over into some, six-figure salary or more on K Street lobbying, using their influence that they gain from that position to make money for themselves and enrich some other companies.
Absolutely. I mean, that smacks of Clinton-esque.
Exactly.
That goes right along with the Clinton Foundation.
So I think you and I are going to agree on that. And again, this is for me, my whole philosophy, and I don't know how much you know about me, but I'm a libertarian in philosophy, and I don't belong to any particular party whatsoever. In this election, I voted for Darrell Caswell of the Constitution Party, and I just did so not because I hated everyone else. I thought he was the best person for the job, and that's how I voted. So and agree or disagree, it's cool. It doesn't we can disagree on stuff, and
well, to make you feel a little better,
what's that?
I actually seriously considered Rand Paul. Okay, but Rand Paul's isolationism is one of the things that kind of turned me off, because even though one of my favorite forefathers is Thomas Jefferson,
yes,
we don't live in Jeffersonian times anymore, and we have to be aware that there are evil forces in the world, and if they take over other countries, and if they proliferate, and like Hitler, Stalin, things like that, if they continue to proliferate, they will become so powerful, and if they took over all of Europe, then they can be a threat to us.
So
and
what evil forces in the world are you actually specifically talking about right now?
Globalism and communism, which have joined together. The globalists are actually using the communists, as Lenin would say, as useful idiots. They're using them to try to create globalization where there are no borders, where anybody on the planet can go anywhere they want. But here's the problem with that. You have a culture clash. You have people of different religions, people that come from different backgrounds. And when they come to a country, a host country, they are supposed to abide by the laws of that country. But when they've been raised all their lives in a different culture and a different religion that is completely antithetical, 180 degrees out from what our laws state, they can't assimilate and they cannot come to our country and be law-abiding citizens, especially when you have people that believe that there is no law higher than Sharia law. And when you believe that, that means you don't believe in our Constitution. If you don't believe in our Constitution and you aren't going to abide by our Constitution, you shouldn't be here.
So, and for those of you guys out there who are not familiar with Sharia law, it's a tenet inside Islam. Essentially, if you take the Quran and the Hadith and the things that the Prophet Muhammad said as the revealed words of God, then you, in essence, believe that Sharia law is above any other man-made law. And in there, it says that it's okay for example, for you to kill an infidel, for you to treat women and infidels as property. They're not really human beings. It's where they get the doctrine that it's okay to kill homosexuals is actually excuse me, a compassionate thing to do in that ideology, in that religious ideology. And
isn't that insane?
It is insane.
It's totally insane. And then what's even more insane, Mac, is that the liberals who champion homosexual rights and the homosexuals themselves are all for it. They're all for letting these so-called refugees, which I view as a Trojan horse of ISIS fighters infiltrating. Look what they've done to Europe. All you have to do is go online and see what they've done to Germany, France,
Switzerland, the rape capital of the world now. First of all, I want to be careful before we give broad generalizations that every homosexual is for Sharia law. That's not. No,
they're not. Yeah, they're not. But generally speaking, the liberals speak or purport to speak for the homosexuals, gay people, and the gay people just lap it up without thinking about the fact these people want to kill you.
I think that the point that we should be really hammering is in regards to this. I think a lot of people are just uninformed, and they've never done the research on Islam as far as these specific tenets. Now, look, I can live side by side anybody as long as they don't want to violate the non-aggression principle. Are you familiar with what the non-aggression principle is, Bill?
Well, basically, it should be conforming to the Constitution of the United States, I would assume, because the Constitution lays down the precepts and the preamble of what our laws should be. Basically, it's the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have done unto you. That's
really good. Yeah. So it can go parallel with the Constitution. They can go hand in hand, but essentially it comes down to two very basic and essential tenets: that it is immoral to hurt other people and to take their stuff. That's something that I think you and I could probably agree on, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is basically, my entire philosophy, and I think, and we talked about earlier this episode, by the way, I think that what a lot of people are failing to do is the research, and we see that 6 out of 10 links that are shared on social media, people don't even click on or read themselves. So people are failing to do the research. The only information that they're getting is from a biased media and from a school that is constantly trying to indoctrinate them to a progressive mindset. So,
everyone should read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals.
Yeah,
he lays out in there exactly what the plan is, what the playbook is to follow. The keystone in there is for communism is to control the people's health care, control the food, keep the people as poverty-stricken as possible, because in that way you can more easily control them. And it's by no coincidence that the unconstitutional 1934 Gun Control Act was instituted at the height of our great American Depression. When my grandfather was working in the shipyards for $1 an hour.
So we got a story that's been happening throughout this week. I would love your opinion on. Are you familiar with this controversy here, where the CIA has been talking about how Russia has influenced the election? Have you been following that story?
Oh yes, oh yes. And here's how I feel about this. That could be true, and then again, it might not be true. Okay, our CIA director converted to Islam. Did you know that?
Not familiar with that. No.
Yeah, our CIA director converted to Islam, okay? Valerie Jarrett, Obama's chief advisor, is an Iranian Muslim, okay? He has filled all the key positions in the federal government with these type of people. He's gotten rid of our good generals and got in yes men. And I cannot take anything from the CIA anymore after the Snowden revelations, and after it being proven that they've been spying on the American people illegally. There were congressional hearings. Nothing ever comes from it, just like Waco and Ruby Ridge. Nothing ever comes from it. Nobody's ever prosecuted. Nobody's ever punished. There is absolutely no accountability ever. And the way I feel about the CIA making these revelations is I take that with a huge grain of salt, because they also are the ones that said that they weren't spying on the American people, but then we found out that they were. And let's take it even further. Let's say that Russia was hacking John Podesta's emails. Let's say that they were doing that. Okay? The reason the liberals are up in arms is not because people are being hacked, because if that was true, where have they been since the Internet's been invented? Where have they been when people hack your page on Facebook? Where have they been when people hack your email? Where have they been when people's identities have been stolen, their lives have been destroyed and disrupted, and their credit ruined? Suddenly now that their illegalities and their criminalities have been exposed, suddenly now they're all about wanting to get into who's responsible for hacking, but only in a very narrow view of who hacked their illegalities, who brought out what they did that was wrong. And the way I feel is this. Let's say for just a moment, Mac, that Russia, let's just say for a moment that Russia did do the hacking, okay? Let's just say that's a given, even though I don't necessarily agree with that. But let's just say for a moment they did. What they did by doing that, if they hacked it and then gave that information to WikiLeaks, they exposed to the American people the corruption of the DNC when Debbie Wasserman Schultz rigged it against Sanders. They exposed Hillary's pay-for-play plan with the Clinton Foundation, where she was taking money to enrich herself and her family personally in order for foreign countries to get the State Department deals they wanted. In other words, she had to sign off on the deal they wanted. They wanted arms or whatever they wanted from the State Department. They had to make a Clinton Foundation donation, or else they didn't get it. Well, these leaks, these hacks, exposed all of this. So the way I look at it is, if Russia is responsible for doing this, they did us a huge favor. And the only reason that the Clintons and the Obamas don't like it is because it exposed what they were doing. So I say, if Russia did do it, thank you. Thank you very much for exposing what people in our government have done, high crimes and treason. And then we have an FBI director that's afraid, I guess, of the same thing happening to him that's happened to 50-some-odd people, from the Clintons all the way from Arkansas to the White House and beyond. He comes out and says, oh, well, I don't really see a reason here to prosecute. Really? Seriously? Even though the law, and his excuse was that he didn't think they did anything intentionally, even though the law specifically states It doesn't have to be intentional. Just the mere fact that you did it is enough, okay? And then, of course, we have Valerie Jarrett, who then acts like Pilate, washing her hands of Jesus' blood. It's not my fault. It's not my fault. The FBI director, James Comey, he said that he didn't recommend prosecution, so it's not me. Give me a break. Obama is the one that has staffed all these key positions of all these federal agencies within our government. And these people know, even if he doesn't come right out and say, hey, you need to do this, just like Fast and Furious with Eric Holder. And Obama, he completely slapped a national security ban on releasing any more information on that because it was going to follow him right to the White House, and he knew it. So what we have here is we have federal agency directors that lie. And they go in front of Congress with a big smirk on their face and take the Fifth Amendment, and they lie. And nothing is done. And we have our good congressmen, Trey Gowdy and people like that try to get to the bottom of these things, and they're just stonewalled all the way. And it's just like when I watch the hearings on Waco, and I watch the hearings on Randy Weaver at Ruby Ridge and the things that were done like this, and nothing is ever done about it. There's no accountability. They get away with it. In fact, a lot of times the people that are responsible are promoted. And this is the problem and this is why all these things, when you take my 63 years of experience in life and seeing these things happen, and then I have an outsider that comes along that wants to drain the swamp, that wants to stop this sort of corruption. Okay, he is not going to be perfect, and the reason he's not going to be perfect is because he can't, because he's got forces assailed against him that's going to fight him every single step of the way. They're already trying to act like this election was now rigged because of fake news. Give me a break.
Isn't it
fake
interesting?
News?
Isn't it just interesting that, like, how that whole narrative had changed? You know, that the DNC, when Donald Trump was saying that the election was rigged, they were freaking out, essentially calling him un-American for even so much as suggesting that the election was rigged, which I disagree. I disagree with both accounts, by the way. I think Trump was wrong in claiming that the election is rigged. The media is rigged, and the media will be extremely biased against him. But I have faith in our electoral system. I think it's the best one ever made. It has its flaws, but it is the best one ever made. And
I agree.
And you know, I have an issue with Donald Trump saying that it's rigged. And now, you know, now that he won the election, first of all, I think that would you know, give a little bit more credibility to the election process to the Republicans. But now even the Democrats are jumping on board. Yeah, it's rigged. The Russians hacked. But let's point out, I don't want to cut you off, but give me 1 second here. Eric Chin he's a cybersecurity expert at Symantec in reference to the Russian hacking. He says it's pretty clear, judging by the indicators of compromise, the binaries that were used to hack the DNC, as well as the Podesta's emails, and as well as other Democratic campaign folks, those IOCs, which again, those are indicators of compromise, match binaries and also infrastructure that was used in attacks that were previously recorded by others as having Russian origin. That much we can confirm. So if you believe other people's, primarily the government's, attribution that those previous attacks were Russian, then these attacks are definitely connected. We're talking about the...
Well, again, you said the magic word, if you believe the government's version, okay? A lot of people believe Barack Obama, the government, the head of the government, when he said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. A lot of people believe the CIA director when he said,
on, Bill.
"No, we don't listen to an American."
Hold on, Bill.
And they did.
Bill, hold up 1 second here. Let me point out these tools, these infrastructures, the binaries that these guys are using are state sponsored. It is such a big infrastructure that it has to be a state sponsored agency. That's the only way that the kind of resources that are used in these kind of hacks would be able to come about. And if it's definitely, it may not necessarily be government agencies. It may not be the FSB over there hacking or something. But for example, I think it was Sandworm or Sandstorm, one of these Russian linked hacking groups. They believe that these are basically the cyber door kickers, where they're.
Well, let's say you're right. Let's say the Russians did hack it. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe if Hillary and Podesta and all the people connected to her had not used unsecured servers, maybe if they had used government servers that could not be hacked so easily, or were very, very improbable to be hacked, maybe none of that would have happened. So who shot themselves in the foot?
Oh, look, no disagreement. They, again, one of the beautiful things about minutia is that there can be people on both sides that are at fault. But one thing I want to point out, because you mentioned that you said thank you, Russia, for pointing out what some of our government officials are doing.
If they did, in fact, I would thank them.
Well,
because you know what, they're not the only people that do that. I mean, we act like we're lily white. Okay, we spy on our allies, and it's been proven that we spy on our allies. Okay, it's not like America is the lily white Jesus Christ in the white robe, and everybody else is Satan.
We spy on our own citizens, and we spy on other governments. I have absolutely no doubt, and this is just my opinion, I have no doubt that Russia influenced this election. At a minimum, they were trying, in my opinion, they were trying to get Trump elected. And now, I'm not saying that they succeeded in doing that. In fact, I don't think that they really did succeed. I don't think it was their efforts. I think there was a culmination of a lot of different things, and more importantly, I think this was a repudiation of the Obama administration's failed policies and the way that they've been shoving these down our throats for the last 8 years. So,
the political correctness of it all.
Agree.
Or the so-called political correctness.
Agree. And more importantly, there's a lot of people, especially in the Rust Belt, that have been living their lives and seeing them get worse and worse and harder year after year. And people were. This wasn't about parties, in my opinion. People were sick of constantly getting a raw end of the deal. And look, I think that they think Donald Trump is going to be the guy to quote, make America great again. If that's the case, I don't know, but they believed it, and people came out to vote for him. So, but
if he stabilizes our border, our border, builds a wall, okay, even if he just improves what we already have, it will be better than what we had, okay. If he also said he did not want to go after all of the Latin ethnicity people.
We're going off into the weeds.
Criminals.
Let's stay on one topic at a time. Okay, I just want to.
Okay.
We're
still on Russia.
Yeah, I want to stay on Russia. There's a lot of stuff. I mean, we could keep going in different areas, but let's pin this one down first. Okay. So Russia. Even if they were responsible for the hackings, and yes, I think it's great that the information is out. We knew, first of all, the game. If anybody who's been paying attention knows, first of all, the Democrats cheat, and second of all, the Democrats do things that can arguably be gray area legally speaking, and sometimes completely illegal in the case of Hillary Clinton. Though I'm not going to go as far as say thank you, Russia, for this, because I think Russia has their own intentions. I think the reason why they wanted Donald Trump to win as opposed to Hillary Clinton is because Hillary Clinton is more confrontational to Russia, and Donald Trump has been showing at least some interest in strengthening U.S. relations with Russia. Would you agree with that, yes or no?
I would agree with that, and I think that he should. Although Vladimir Putin is no friend to our constitutional form of Republican government, still, they are a Western society. Okay, the average religion in Russia is Catholicism. Okay, they don't let Muslims into Russia. They don't let Muslims into Japan. But you don't hear the liberals attacking Japan because they don't want to let Muslims in, because the Japanese premier and the Russian premier, they recognize that that Sharia law is antithetical to the laws of their country. It's completely 180 degrees in opposition to the culture of their people. And the problem that I have with the Muslims infiltrating is that even the ones that the liberals say are good Muslims, that are peaceful Muslims, if you ask them, and I've seen the interviews on the streets where they've gone up to the good Muslims, the peaceful Muslims, and they've asked them, if given a choice, would you rather live under United States constitutional law, or would you rather live under Sharia? And every single one of them says Sharia.
Okay.
Now, this is the good Muslims.
Hold on. Again, we're going off in the weeds again, Bill.
I'm sorry.
It's cool.
But this does relate to Russia in the fact that Russia... Well, okay, let me bring it back to Russia. Russia is a Western country. Agreed?
I would disagree with that. I think one of the tenets of being a Western country would be, either Republican form of government or democracy. I don't think Russia...
Well, let me restate it. I would say that the culture of the people of Russia, not necessarily their form of government, but the culture of the people themselves is more Western than Islamic or Eastern. Wouldn't you agree with that?
I mean, I think they're just a different breed. They're two different societies. Well, again, Western society is more along the lines of either democratic rule or Republican forms of government, like our system of government. But Russia is different. It's an entirely different breed. They have an entirely different history. Same
but
with
they've
Islam.
changed since Gorbachev and the wall came down. They have ameliorated their hardline Stalinistic type of communism, and they have slowly let some of our type of free enterprise, more freedoms come into the Russian people, because they saw that the old hardline Stalinism didn't work. It doesn't work anywhere in any country it's ever been tried in.
I mean,
unfortunately, Vladimir Putin wants to reinstitute the USSR, and that is a direct threat. However, I think that you can work with Putin rather than just view him as the enemy. Because listen, if you don't work with somebody that has all those nukes, it could turn out to be really, really bad. It could turn into a third world war. And in fact, Russia was even saber-rattling about that if Hillary Clinton was elected, that it could actually bring about a third world war.
So do you think,
I think it's much better to work with them.
Do you think Russia is
No,
our
I don't
friend?
believe they're our friend. I don't believe they're our friend at all. I believe their actions in the Ukraine prove that. Mm-hmm. Just like China in the South China Sea, establishing bases where they don't even really have authority.
So are they our adversary?
Well, I would say that there are adversaries in certain regards, okay, but not on everything. They need the United States. Number one, the United States is a breadbasket to the world. We can grow food here and harvest food much longer than they can in Russia. In Russia, they have a 6-week window to be able to get their wheat. So they don't want to irradiate the United States. I mean, we ship all kinds of food to Russia and China, and also China has us as a very large market. However, they're not, just like Donald Trump says, they're not playing fair. They devalue their currency. They are stealing our jobs. And he's been taking actions even before he's sworn in to try to, as we have seen with Carrier and with Ford, he already, before the man's even been sworn into office, he's done good. I mean, he made a lot of people's Christmas very happy this year that worked for Carrier.
So let's hold on. Let me just comment on that.
Now, he's not perfect. He's not perfect. Nobody is.
Let me comment on that Carrier thing for 1 second, because the tax breaks that he's given Carrier, or that he's saying that he's going to give Carrier, Carrier said that they're going to use that money to invest in automation. So the jobs that they're going to supposedly save from that are going to be replaced by machines, which I honestly.
Someone has to build those machines. Someone has to program those machines.
Agreed. But honestly, to me, I think the free market here should be left to its own devices. In regards to what they should have done, this is just my opinion, is to get rid of a lot of the regulation from like Obamacare, for example, which Donald Trump, by the way, is not saying that he's going to totally replace. He's saying he's going to repeal and replace. I want it to be repealed, not replaced. I want the free market to take hold, and I don't want them. By the way, he's talking about keeping the age 26 thing on there, so you can keep your kids on your policies until they're 26, having an exemption for previous conditions, some health-related conditions before. So, insurance companies won't be able to deny you for pre-existing conditions. That's not possible, according to all the experts I'm reading about. They're saying that it's not possible to have these two things without still having a mandate. Or at least, in my opinion, what I think Donald Trump is going to do is turn it into a single-payer healthcare system, which again is just increasing the burden.
No, that goes to socialized medicine. He wants to do away with the state borders And see, with the single-payer system, that's now a government socialized medicine system, which will, by very definition, every country that has socialized medicine, every single one of them, even though they may deny it, they all have death panels. We have it built into our Affordable Health Care Act already. If you're over the age of 74 years old and you need life-saving medical procedures done, you have to go before a board who will decide if you're worthy or not to be saved.
I agree. This is why
and those sort of things. Those sort of things is what needs to be repealed.
Donald Trump is saying that the government is going to pay for everybody's health care. He's saying everybody's going to. Here's a clip. You don't have to take my word for it, folks. Here's Donald Trump saying that the government's going to pay for health care. It's going to be better under him.
What's your plan for Obamacare?
Obamacare is going to be repealed and replaced. Obamacare is a disaster. If you look at what's going on with premiums, where they're up 45, 50, 55%.
So how do you fix it?
There's many different ways, by the way. Everybody's got to be covered. This is an un-Republican thing for me to say, because a lot of times they say, no, the lower 25%, they can't afford private. But
universal health care.
I am going to take care of everybody. I don't care if it costs me votes or not. Everybody's going to be taken care of much better than they're taken care of now.
The uninsured person is going to be taken care of.
They're going to be taken care of.
How?
I would make a deal with existing hospitals to take care of people. And you know what? This is probably...
Make a deal. Who pays for it?
The government's going to pay for it, but we're going to save so much money on the other side.
And these are the same exact arguments that we heard from Obamacare, saying that we're going to save money on the other side with, or from Obama saying we're going to save money on the other side with Obamacare. What he's referring to is single-payer health care. This is
well, actually, that's debatable, though, Mac, and I'll tell you why. We already have Medicare. Okay, Medicare already takes care. When he says that he's going to take care of everybody, we already have that. You know, I don't understand. Well, I do understand, because they want to take over the healthcare system, because, again, that's the keystone in Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That's the number one thing you want to take over, is the healthcare, because then the people are totally dependent upon the government for their healthcare. What Donald Trump is talking about there, if you read between the lines, and you know how he speaks, sometimes he says things off the cuff. He doesn't elaborate maybe and give you as many details as what he should. He repeats himself a lot. But I know what he's speaking to there, and what he's talking about when he says, yes, we're going to take care of everybody, and the government will take care of those people that are uninsured. He's talking about the very same thing that we have in Medicare, okay? And already it is a law that if you go to the emergency room of a hospital, whether you have insurance or not, they have to take care of you.
That's not what he's talking
already
about, Bill. He's talking
but how
about
do you
the
know?
government, because he's saying the government's going to pay for your health care. I mean, there's a difference between a hospital has to take you if you go into an emergency room, then the government is going to pay for your health care. He's talking about single payer health care. Look, you can disagree with what I'm saying, but this is Donald Trump's exact words. And look, you may not believe that he's saying this. You may think he's doing the Orwellian doublespeak that he tends to do, but that's okay. You're entitled to your opinion. This is just mine. But
we need to give the man a chance. Okay, we had an Acorn community organizer that had no experience.
I'm giving him a chance. I'm not saying that I'm not going
Let's
to.
give him a chance. Let's see. I mean, I could be wrong about certain things.
I don't want him to grow the government, and I don't think you do either. And I think if we're being intellectually consistent here, if Donald Trump does do that, I just want to ask you, if Donald Trump does create a Trump care, so to speak, would you oppose him on that?
Well, it would depend on what's in it. It would depend.
If it's going to redistribute
I don't
wealth,
think that people's wealth should be redistributed.
Okay,
that's communism.
So if it's going to redistribute wealth, whether or not, no matter what name you put it under, if you say it's Medicare or whatever,
it's communism. If you redistribute the wealth from people that work to earn it, that is communism.
So if that
I disagree with
Trump
that.
care, if Trump passes it repeals Obamacare, replaces it with Trump care, where companies, private insurance companies, cannot deny people with pre-existing conditions, and in order to pay for that, they have to pass some kind of mandate. In order to do that, they have to take money from one person and subsidize another person's health care. If Donald Trump
I would disagree with that.
Okay.
I would disagree with that.
And so would I. So what? As long as we're both looking,
we're on the same page, Mac.
as long as we're both looking at this, without rose-colored glasses, and we're not making excuses for the man, I think we're on the same page. So we can move back to the carrier thing with carrier, because let's work our way back, peel this onion back, get back to Russia here in a second. But back to the carrier thing. I don't think that there should be special exemptions for certain companies to save jobs and I don't think we should be, giving tax breaks so somebody won't leave. I think the answer here is to get rid of all this regulatory red tape, like Obamacare, like the EPA regulations that stifle industry here in our country, that make it damn near impossible for us to even build things
100%.
in this nation. So rather than saying, "Oh, we're going to give a tax break to so and so," instead of doing that, you get rid of Obamacare. You let the free market replace it. You stop regulating the hell out of people with the EPA, and then at that point, that companies will come back, especially if we simplify the tax code. I don't like the idea that what Donald Trump just did here with the carrier thing. This is crony corporatism, where you give special favors.
I think I can explain that. I think I can explain that and maybe give you a different aspect to reflect upon.
Okay, go for it.
Okay. He hasn't been sworn in yet, so he cannot enact his removal of all these crazy regulations that they have. He hasn't been able to get it down to 15 or 20% from where it is now. Okay. Well, on the taxation on the businesses. He hasn't been able to enact that, okay? So he saw that Carrier was about to make a move that was going to cost a lot of people their jobs. So he came in and he did a temporary fix. Temporary. Okay, now it's possible that it may appear to people that there was a little bit of crony capitalism going on there, that there was some payoffs and some and that there were some things given to Carrier that aren't available to other people yet. But he has promised that he's not going to just do this onesies and twosies like that. He's going to do this across the board. I believe that this was kind of like in his mind, he saw this. And I believe he's a fair man. I do. Just from, we all can be wrong. Anybody can pull the wool over our eyes, okay? All we know is what we are told, what people promise us. But I do see a man here that is shaking both parties to the core, that has won an unprecedented mandate from the American people who are sick and tired of the corruption and the political correctness. I mean, all the reasons that you said, there's myriad different reasons why he was elected. Okay, I think that he's going to do exactly what he said. Is it going to be perfect? It never is. It never will be. Jesus isn't in charge of our government, so it's never going to be perfect. And sometimes there's going to have to be compromises made, because you're not going to be able to get something passed through the Congress, even though you control both houses. There's going to be filibusters in the Senate by the Democrats. Okay, there's going to have to be some compromises made. However, I think that what he's trying to do is he's trying to keep jobs in America. And he was trying to, by doing this with Carrier, I think it was a twofold reason. Number one, he saw it was an emergency situation, that if he didn't act then, those jobs would be gone. Okay? So, number two, he also wanted to show and create an example to show the American people that even before he was sworn into office, that he was trying to do some of the very things that he promised he was going to do. However, he was not able to do it across the board yet, because he hasn't been sworn in. He doesn't have that authority. He can't go to Congress and address Congress as the President of the United States and say, we need to pass a law doing away with these regulations so that all the businesses are equal. And I agree with you 100% on that. It should be equal for everyone. The one thing I disagree with you on, Mac, and respectfully disagree on, is free market trade. Okay? The problem with that is when you have China devaluing their currency,
we do the
artificially manipulating and stealing our jobs, when you have people in Mexico working in sweatshops, for pennies on the dollar, okay, we cannot compete with that here in this country.
Do you think we should
our standard of living
China,
is much too high.
Do you think we should compete with China in making like baby diapers and things like that? Do you think those are jobs that Americans want?
I think that we should compete with all countries on everything. At the end of World War II, we were the manufacturing capital of the world. Okay,
would you say that
the problem changed? The problem is, see, here's the problem with looking at a global economy. It will destroy America. It has sucked the jobs out of this country. Over 700,000 factories have shut down in this country as a result of a globalist type of economy. Okay,
So
that's
you're
going to
not for
drive
free trade,
Americans' economy down. That's going to destroy the middle class
you're
and
not-
take jobs.
You're not for free
They'll
trade.
bleed off to Mexico. They'll bleed off to Vietnam. They'll bleed off to China. And before you know it, you have Detroit with empty factories with pigeons flying through the broken windows.
So you're not
And that's
for
what has
free
happened.
trade then?
I'm sorry?
So you're not for free trade then?
I'm for free trade, okay? But they, just like Donald Trump says, they've got to play fair, okay? And they're not playing fair with us, okay? They manufacture items and bring them into our country with no tax on them, none. They bring them across the border in Mexico, truckloads full of materials and stuff they bring into this country with no tax on them. And then they're able to manufacture them very, very cheaply in Mexico, taking jobs away from Americans. And then they want to sell them here in the United States to the very same Americans that don't have the jobs to be able to make any money to afford to buy those items.
So, Bill,
what that does is that destroys the middle class.
Bill, I need to correct you. Goods imported from China are subject to a VAT tax. It's a standard 17% tax.
I'm talking about Mexico.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm assuming that that's regulated as well. Let's go ahead and Google that as well. Does Mexico?
Not according to Donald Trump. He said they're bringing these things in across the border, and they're not being taxed.
Well, I don't think that's accurate here.
See, we cannot compete. We cannot compete with other countries that pay their people 25 cents an hour.
Okay,
we cannot do that and maintain the lifestyle that Americans have become used to. We can't do it.
Bill. Hold on, because you said a lot. Let's digest some of the stuff you were talking about here. First of all, you can't be for free trade if you are for regulating free trade. That's the
a certain amount of it has to be regulated.
No, it doesn't. It does not. And I would contend that this is a big area where we disagree, because the answer is free trade.
Well, then we'll be competing at 25 cents an hour, and people won't be able to own homes. They'll barely be able to eke out a living. In other words, the American worker will be in the same position as somebody working in a sweatshop in Mexico. And that is the only way that is what would happen.
That's a gross misrepresentation of what would actually happen. Because if first of all, if we did not have all of these regulations preventing us from actually producing things here, and we didn't have the government picking winners and losers, then at that point, the free market. Because first of all, I think you would agree, and correct me if I'm wrong, can slaves compete against free people? Is it possible for slaves to compete against free people?
In an economy?
Yeah.
In a global economy.
Mm-hmm.
When you're talking about slaves, you're talking about the people in the sweatshops, right?
Yeah, no, and I'm talking about people without freedom to make choices to better their lives. People that are hindered by the government.
Basically, these are indentured servants. Basically, just like the people on H-1B visas, they're indentured servants. Yes, I believe they can. I as a whole. I believe not as individuals, but as a whole.
No, and not even as a whole, because they don't have the freedoms to make decisions, to innovate.
No, they don't. They're just a worker. But
exactly.
the people that control their output, the people that control what they're producing, they can unfairly compete. Well, you can say it's. I guess it isn't proper to say unfairly, because they're working strictly from a business point of view. We're making it as cheap as we can,
exactly.
And we're going to make as much money as we can.
Exactly.
However, what's happening is when they pay these people, which are basically indentured servants, because they're making pennies on the dollar compared to American workers.
Okay.
When those people produce those items and they bring them here, okay, then our companies in America cannot pay people to make that as cheaply as what those foreign countries can.
And why can't we?
Agreed?
Why can't we? I would contend it's because the government has things like minimum wage and gets in between people and the jobs that they may want to do. But more importantly, let's also point out that there are some jobs like Carrier, for example. One of the reasons why Carrier was moving to Mexico is because they are spending so much time, money, and energy having to train and retrain people on how to produce their goods. So what they do is they'll train somebody, and then a few months later that person will go find another job. And typically what they've noticed is that the people here are taking these jobs while they're looking for another jobs. And unfortunately, it's different in Mexico. In Mexico, where they're sending people will want to have this job for 20 years because it's a good job in Mexico. What I contend is that the specialization is a wonderful thing. Specialization. If China wants to make all the baby diapers in the world, let them make baby diapers. There's not a whole lot of money in baby diapers. That's why they're paying their workers 25 cents a day, basically.
But it's not just baby diapers, Mac. It's everything.
I get
it. You go to the store today and try to find something that isn't made in China. There's very few items that are still made in the USA.
That's not.
I mean, almost all the electronics. You go buy a toaster, a blender. It's made in China.
The United
it's not just baby diapers. It's everything.
Exporter. The United States is still a massive exporter. We still do make things here. It's just very, very, very difficult. What I contend is that the next 10, 15, maybe even 20 years, we're going to see a massive technological shift, and there's going to be jobs that are going to be lost in this transition. I don't think that it's a bad thing, because just like when the horse and buggy was replaced by the automobile, that wasn't a bad thing. It put all those people in that industry out of business, but it also created new business. Our job here in America is going to be to innovate. We're going to find
they segued from making buggies into making automobile bodies. Some of the very same people that used to create the buggy bodies became what they used to call coach makers. Okay, in the early days of the automobile industry, up through into the 1930s even, they still called them coach makers. In fact, if you look at Cadillac, they have a little emblem sometimes they would put inside their cars that would say "Coach" by DeVille. And the coach makers actually segue into the automobile bodies.
And this is part of that
there's a lot of companies that would very easily be able to adapt to that new technology.
Exactly. My point here is that here in America, we have the freedoms that other people don't. We have the ability to pursue our own interests. We have the ability to.
But that freedom's been infringed by regulation.
Exactly, and which I'm saying, if we got rid of the regulation and we're able, as free people, to compete against people who are essentially slaves in other countries who don't have these same liberties respected, we will be able to find new ways to produce jobs, to make money, and it will be all right, is what I'm saying. This is the free market at its best. People will find.
But in order to do that, I believe that you need to remove the regulation that our own country puts on our own companies, not globally. Okay, not do away with our regulation of items that are being imported into our country. Because again, I go back to, and if you will, please explain to me how you think that if you have, let's say, I keep going back to Mexico. I mean, it could be Vietnam. It could be a slew of different countries. But let's just take Mexico as an example, because it's close. We can drive down there and drive right across. Okay. How do you have the American people's standard of living kept up? I'm talking about the middle class for the most part here, because without the bourgeoisie, without the bourgeois middle class, all you have is the upper class and the lower class, okay? And then you're going to have a revolution. That's the road to revolution. So without the middle class, and with the middle class's income dropping, as it has been under Obama, how can you keep the middle class? How can you keep jobs in this country? How can you keep the wages up to where, you have a mother and the father both working today? It's not like when I was a kid in the 50s and my dad worked and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. Today, both parents have to work just to make it, So how do you keep their wages up to where they can maintain that level that puts them in the middle class when they are competing against somebody that's working for 25 cents an hour in Mexico?
Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, but you thought that it was a bad thing when you heard, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." This is the difference. I do not believe that the government, first of all, can help. But second of all, I don't think it's their job. I think the only thing that the government can do is, first of all, no government can create jobs. Government cannot create jobs. All they can do is redistribute wealth and take it away from you, where you would have had the choice to use it in the free market and put it somewhere else.
How about my question, though, Mac? How do you compete and keep the middle class wages up in America so that we continue the lifestyle that we're used to? How are you able to do that
The government can't do that. That's not that. First of all, it's not the government's job. The way that it's done is the government gets out of our way. The government stops taxing the crap out of people, stops regulating the crap out of people, stops giving more.
I agree with that. I agree with that. However, I do think that they need to have import fees upon countries that will pay their people 25 cents an hour, and then they bring their goods over here and sell them to us, knocking out us from making those goods and making it impossible for us to compete with them globally.
You're talking about tariffs, and tariffs, if we impose tariffs, we know it will start a trade war with the other countries that we're imposing tariffs on, and we have seen study after study that is saying that if we impose tariffs now, not only will it stagnate our economy, but it will shrink our economy. Our GDP.
Well, what do you think is the answer then? How do we compete, and how do we maintain the middle class, Mac? How do we do that? How do we maintain the middle class when we're competing against these other countries and where they're paying their people, 25 cents or $1 an hour or something like that? How do we compete against that and maintain our middle class? How do we do it?
First of all, the middle class in the ideology of what a middle class is, this is Marxist. This idea of a middle class is Marxist. Second of all, it's not the government's responsibility.
No, the Marxists destroyed the middle class. If you read Lenin and Stalin, they were against the bourgeois, the evil capitalistic bourgeoisie, as they were known.
Putting people into economic classes is a Marxist ideology. This is Marxism. The point, though, that I'm making is that it is not the government's job, and the free market will do this job better if the government just gets out of the way of people. And if the government
let's say there were no regulations, there were no import taxes, no export taxes, there was no nothing. It was just anybody in the world could make anything and sell anything anywhere they want.
That's called free market. Yes.
How does that maintain the middle class in America when other countries, people live in very low incomes, and just some of them just barely survive? I mean, they're not living, they're existing, okay? How do we maintain the level that the American people are used to? I'm not talking about the big boys at the top. I'm talking about the middle-class American. I'm talking about the mom and pop that both work a job, have 2 cars, and have a couple of kids, and they have a halfway decent house, but they're up to their neck in debt. How do you maintain that class when you're competing against foreign markets that pay their people pennies on the dollar?
More jobs will be incentivized to be created here because if you prevent the government from getting in the way of a basic employer, of somebody who's just an entrepreneur trying to start a job, you have no idea how many jobs don't even get created because of the sheer amount of bureaucracy that people just don't want to deal with. So
yeah, my company that was destroyed by the ATF illegally.
There you go. So if the government isn't in your way, more jobs will be created. Therefore, more wealth will be in this country, and more people will be living happier, more sustainable lives, hopefully with less debt. If the government is out of your way and not trying to get in between you as a barrier in the free market between what you want to do and another party. I
agree with you 100% on that, Mac. Within our borders. I agree with you. I agree with what you just said 100%.
Are you familiar
within
with
our borders? Where you and I think, disagree is when it comes to international trade.
And what my point is that every time historically we have seen tariffs, it has ended horribly. Tariffs of Smoot-Hawley, it extended the Great Depression. Tariffs will not go well here. And again, all it will do is create a trade war, and that subsequent trade war that will follow, I'm reading expert after expert saying that it's going to shrink our GDP, not just stagnate it. Right now we're seeing like 2%, GDP growth underneath Obama. It's going to go down to negative GDP growth. We're going.
Let's say what you proposed was instituted. Let's say that somehow we could magically flip a switch, and what you proposed was instituted, where there were no regulations, no government interference, no import or export fees with any government on the planet. Of course, this of course will foster globalization in a way, because once you tie the entire world together like that, you might as well not have any borders.
I got news for you, Bill.
That then is culture.
The government, the world is already linked. Look around your house right now. I guarantee you, 90% of the products that you're looking at right now are from somewhere else. You're already linked,
and that's just the problem. That's just the problem. But they're not manufactured in the United States.
Your answer then is to make all of the products in your house more expensive artificially, first of all, and secondly, the money that it's going to go, it's not creating more jobs here in America. The products that you're going to get from somewhere else are going to be taxes. The money that you're going to pay extra is going to the government. So all you're getting is some fat cat bureaucrat that's going to be lining his pockets with your money. And this is just redistribution of wealth. That's all it is. This is redistribution of wealth. The government shakes you by your ankles and sees what falls out. This is what.
Well, I disagree. I disagree with the government regulating the American people. But I think when it comes to trade with other countries, we have to take a hard look at that, just like Donald Trump has been saying.
If China can make diapers cheaper than Americans, then Americans should be free to buy those diapers cheaper. I don't think they should be forced to pay an exorbitant amount of taxes to the government, where it's not being used to benefit them in any way. This money is being squandered like all government money is, and then on top of that, you may not even.
Well, if you charge China a fee, let's say blenders, toasters, electronics. It's not just, like I said earlier, it's not just diapers. It's all kinds of products. I mean, diapers
as an example.
makes it seem. I know, but it makes it seem too simplistic. You know as well as I do that you look at almost everything in the average American household today, and probably 80% of it is China. Okay, so it's huge. It's gigantic. Okay, and so many of our businesses have left. I mean, look at places like Detroit. Look at what Detroit is like, burnt out Beirut now. Okay, and why is that? Why has that happened? Well, because our factories shut down. Because they can't compete with the wages that are paid in Mexico, for instance. Again, it could be Vietnam, it could be South Korea, it could be Taiwan, it could be anywhere.
So how are tariffs going to help the middle class? I'm just putting the question back on you, because again, if our GDP shrinks, as every expert I've read on the subject is saying, tariffs will shrink our GDP. If we're having less wealth in our country, how are tariffs going to resolve this issue? If we're going to have less wealth than we would otherwise?
Well, I believe that the tariffs on foreign countries for importing their goods into our country will cause American businesses to be able to compete. Okay, you can call it artificial, but anything in economics is artificial. We know that anything in the marketplace like that is artificial. It always is. It's just by its very nature. But
so in that case, the government is picking winners and losers in that situation.
Not if they do it equally across the board.
The losers
if they do it equally across the board for everyone, the only ones then that aren't going to like it is the foreign countries that have been taking advantage of us and bleeding off our jobs for decades.
What happens when the foreign countries start imposing tariffs on us, and now we're not able to compete in the global market? Yeah, now our citizens are forced to buy the products here that they were buying overseas cheaper. Now everything is more expensive.
They're not forced to.
No,
it's just that if they buy the foreign products,
you're going to pay out the nose.
The foreign product is going to add on to the cost of that item what their tariff was.
Yeah, so you're going to pay out of the nose if you want to buy something from Japan, and you're going to if you want to pay for that, it'll just be more expensive than the good that we may or may not be producing here. So as a consumer,
you have that now. If you buy a Jaguar, or if you buy a Mercedes, I mean, it costs you some more.
As a consumer, you're going to be paying more for the things that you buy every day, and as our economy, our GDP will be shrinking because we'll be less competitive overseas as trade wars happen. So we'll have less wealth in our nation, but all of our prices are going to exponentially increase, in addition to the fact of all the jobs that we'll lose here from places like Walmart that sell foreign goods and make their entire business plan on that. So
they'll be replaced by American goods.
How is that going to happen? Because
our factories will start back up again, because we've taken the regulation off of our American business people, where they say, great, we're now no longer paying 35% in taxes.
We won't be able to, because first of all, we're still going to have minimum wage. We're going to unless you're saying completely get rid of that, and you think Trump's going to do that, which I don't, because Donald Trump has said he's for minimum wage increases, he's for Medicare, he's for Social Security, he's for all these things. So I have no problem with a living wage. That I don't think a person can survive
on some of the indentured servant wages that some people are getting.
You think that somebody is supposed to be able to survive and pay, and like be the breadwinner of a household at a job like McDonald's?
No, that's an entry-level job that should be given to a 16-year-old or a kid in high school.
These are the kind of when you're talking about a minimum wage job, these are entry-level jobs. That's what it should be.
Yes, they are.
So,
yes, they are, and I agree.
The talking point of a living wage, this is a leftist talking point. Again, I'm for free markets. I'm for you to be able to enter into any contract of your choosing, as long as you're not hurting others or taking their stuff. As long as everything's mutual and voluntary, you should be able to work for whatever wage that you want to, and an employer should be able to hire you for whatever wage they want to. I don't think this.
But the reality is that in foreign countries, the people will work for pennies on the dollar compared to what Americans historically have worked for.
And that's fine.
And that's a fact. That's a fact.
Let them. That only hurts us if they're able to produce something cheaper than us.
And they can, because they're able to produce it cheaper.
And why are these people in China
less hourly wages to their employees?
Why are people in China working at sweatshops? Does some government goon got a gun to their head saying you better work?
That's because the only way they can survive.
Okay,
that's the only way they can survive.
And
that's what they have to do.
Why would they choose to work in a sweatshop?
Because it's better for them than working in a rice paddy.
Okay, so the point being, if their employers over there are able to make a profit and pay these people, a really cheap amount of money, and they're willing to do it because there's nothing better over there, then good. Let them work in those sweatshops. They have every right to choose what they want to work for. Whereas here,
but see, that oppressive government in that country now affects our economy.
And that this is the free market. You either want to let people make their own decisions or you don't. You want to get in between those people. And personally, I don't look. I think that some governments have extremely bad policies. I think our own government has extremely bad policies. I think that the best solution is to let people innovate, make their own minds up, and be the people who decide their own destiny.
Maybe ultimately that could happen, but that will never happen as long as you have dictatorial and tyrannical regimes in some countries where they keep their people down so much to where the people will work just to barely have a can of beans to eat.
If we
when you have countries that are like that, where the people literally will do anything just to be able to eat, okay, you cannot compete in America. You cannot compete with the output from those countries. You can't compete with it. It's impossible.
So
not unless you want to drag your people down to the same level. And in a way, what you're doing now is you're actually involved with communism, because you've gone global with the globalization, and you've brought the American worker down to where their wages are matching the wages of the people in the foreign country. Now, until the foreign countries start raising their people's wages. Okay, if they raise their people's wages, then the Americans, it would finally, kind of like water seeking its own level. If you raise the wages of the people in the foreign countries, then we might be able to compete. But as long as those people are just working just to exist, they're not really living, not really enjoying life, just working in a sweatshop to exist and living in poverty. As long as you have people that are producing goods and making the people that own those companies in those foreign countries rich, the American worker isn't going to be able to, and the American businessman isn't going to be able to compete against that. It's going to be impossible. Tell me how they could compete.
This is where we disagree, because again, the slave wages that these people are, they may have a lot more cheaper workers over there working in a factory, working in an assembly line, something along those lines, and we may not be able to compete with them making toasters, making bookshelves, making all sorts of other crap that they make over there.
Right.
But even if we're not, I don't think that we should necessarily be competing in the areas that they're able to make cheaper. We should be looking in areas like medicine, technology, energy. Those are the areas that we're going to be making money in the future. Those are the
look at our educational system. If what you want to achieve there.
Hold on. I'll let you have your say. Let me have mine.
Okay.
Right? Look, I think that we're looking in different areas. I don't think that manufacturing is going to be our bread and butter like it was in the past. I think that with new technology and with the way that the economy is going to be changing as this technology is advancing, I think that a lot of jobs are going to shift from one way of doing it to another. Now, I hope that we can find ways to innovate in manufacturing here in America. I hope that we can do that, and I do believe that with the freedom that we have here, we got more minds that are free to think and to act on their own behalf for their own benefit than any other nation in the world, because we are free here, and that is our biggest benefit. But
I don't feel so free when I invented something, was approved on it twice, and then had illegal actions by a government agency shut down, destroy my company, and have two courts rubber stamp them and say that was just fine.
What happened
I don't
to
necessarily feel like I'm free anymore.
What happened to you perfectly illustrates my point. It shows that we need less government intervention as opposed to more. If people are free to make up their own minds, to innovate, to do things within their own self-interest, to better their own lives, to come up with, just like you did, you came up with you found a way to benefit yourself. And you use this advancement, this invention, to try to benefit yourself. And what happened?
And not only myself, also part of my my idea about doing that was to try to. I thought, and I've never stated this publicly before, but I have always felt that if I could get that on the market, like I was attempting to do, and actually did eventually accomplish with the isometric stocks. Okay, a lot of people in the firearms industry today know what bump fire rifle stocks are. Mm-hmm. Okay, I feel gratified, even though I got more or less screwed on the deal, and a lot of other people made a great deal more money than I ever did off of my invention. At least I did accomplish this one thing, and that is that I brought us closer to basically invalidating and pretty much doing away with the very reason for the 1934 Gun Control Act that did away, for all practical purposes, with the average individual owning a fully automatic weapon. I feel like I brought us a little closer to our original freedom because, yeah, you still have to pay the $200 transfer tax to get a fully automatic weapon. You still have to go through the FBI background investigation check and go through all those hoops if you want to buy a discrete, fully automatic weapon. However, you can still go rat-a-tat-tat with a bump fire stock. And I feel like one of the things that I wanted to accomplish was to basically gut that unconstitutional prohibition on our Second Amendment. And I feel that I did accomplish that, even though I did not personally get enriched from it like I should have. So I did accomplish that, and that was one of the reasons that I wanted to do it, because I've been an entertainer for many, many years, and I've made enough money doing that to where it wasn't necessary for me to have a whole lot of money. I had everything I wanted. I'm not a greedy person. I don't need Ferraris and Maseratis. I have a nice house, a couple of cars. How much does a man need, And so I wanted to give something to the people that would promote our Second Amendment rights. And by inventing this and getting this on the market, and even though other individuals are producing it, there's several companies that produce it, and even though I did not see the financial enrichment from it that I should have, I feel that history will show that I did contribute towards doing away with something that was an illegal law to begin with.
So my point in bringing this up, though, is that it's illustrating the fact that you were doing something that was creating jobs, being innovative, and doing something that people in other countries just can't do. They can't. Most people won't be able to compete
because of their restrictive firearms laws in other countries.
Because of government intervention, not just in this area, but in a plethora of other areas. If we remove the government barriers in our way, even if we are connecting with other nations around the world. You called that communism. I would disagree. Communism, its core tenets.
No, I call that globalization. And I believe the globalists are using the communism.
There's nothing wrong with globalization, insofar as long as everything's voluntary, it's not centralized planning, and it's not based on redistribution of wealth.
Ordinarily, I would agree with you, except for one point.
Okay.
The one thing that bothers me about globalization is, actually, there's two things. Number one, it's being pushed by the Rothschilds, by their agent, George Soros. Okay? That's number one. And you have to look at why. Why are the Rothschilds and why are George Soros pushing for the globalization?
Let me clarify, because you're conflating these two things to each other, and they're not. And the difference is George Soros is talking about globalization insofar as it being a collectivization of governments or central planning globally. The difference between free market globalization and government globalization is astoundingly different. One is based on coercive force of government, and the other one is based upon free will without any central planning whatsoever. So it's about individuals.
But we can't have people from other cultures that come to our country that will not conform to our constitutional
I'm not talking
laws.
about immigration. Now, immigration, as far as immigration is concerned, each nation has their own right to have their own.
So you agree with that?
Yeah, I'm all about national sovereignty. You have a right.
But why is it okay? Why is it okay, Mac, in your mind? And I'm just trying to find out where you're coming from here. Respectfully, why is it okay in your mind that we have globalization economically, but we don't have globalization when it comes to immigration? Isn't that kind of like a contradiction between when you think that we should let the free market, everything goes, anything's fine, wouldn't that also extend to immigration? Or are you making a line in the sand when it comes to culture clash?
I make a line in the sand not because of culture. I make a line in the sand for immigration because of the finite amount of jobs that we currently have in specific areas. For example, what I'm saying is, first of all, I think we should be a lot quicker at bringing people into our nation. I don't think it should take 10 years to go through the background check process and to be vetted. I think it should be a hell of a lot faster. I think we should use immigration as a tool to enrich our nation. We should bring in people that are going to fill jobs that we desperately need filled. Like, for example,
but you agree they need to be vetted.
Agreed, absolutely.
And when they have no paperwork and we don't know where they were born, and they were born in a little hovel somewhere next to a camel and a sheep, when we have no way of knowing where they came from and they arrive with no paperwork, wouldn't you agree that it's dangerous for us to allow those sort of people into our country?
I think people that come from nations that are known to harbor terrorists should be vetted even more than everyone else. And
what if we can't vet them?
Then they
what if it's
come
impossible?
In my opinion, this is a job application process. You want to be an American citizen. This is the most coveted citizenship in the world. You want to be an American citizen. Well, what do you bring to the table? Are you going to create a job? Are you an entrepreneur? Do you have a business already and you want to bring it here to America?
You know how difficult it is to do that in Switzerland if you try to immigrate legally? Before they opened up their borders, with the European Union.
Yeah.
But it was because I checked on it one time, just out of curiosity. You have to have a great deal of money and practically have a business. And, I mean, you've got to bring a lot to the table if you want to immigrate to Switzerland legally. But we open up our borders and just let these people in, no vetting.
I'm not for that.
It's insane. But isn't that the same thing that we're doing if we have a global economy?
No.
Isn't that aren't we involved in doing the same thing, but just for economics instead of for immigration?
There's a difference between trade and immigration, and the difference for me is immigration. People are coming here, first of all. In the case of most of the illegal immigrants that come here, for example, they're coming here low-skilled laborers, and we have a finite amount of low-skilled labor jobs, and we have plenty of low-skilled labor workers here in our country. So I'm not for importing more low-skilled laborers. If you come here, I think we should be willing to let anybody who wants to come here as long as they can pass a vetting process, and they're going to bring something to the table. This is a job application as far as I'm concerned. Are you going to create a job, or are you going to fill one that we need workers to fill? We don't have enough.
Well, we're doing that to protect the people of this country,
exactly.
Right?
Yes.
Okay, well then how do we protect the people. Now that's protecting them both economically and physically, okay? Because we don't want to bring in too many, or else now you're affecting Americans' jobs, okay? And if you don't bring in the good ones, if you don't vet them properly, now you're having people getting their heads cut off and blown up, correct? So if we're going to do that, if we're going to protect the American people that way, don't we also have to protect the American people economically?
Look, my point here is not about protectionism. My point is more honestly, it's more along the lines of do you have a right to lock your door? And I do believe that you do. We have a nation here, and Trump is right insofar as when he says, if you don't have a border, you don't have a nation, and it's true. You have to be able to control who comes in and out. I mean, that is honestly the one of the hallmarks of a nation is you have to be able to control who's entering into your country and who.
Otherwise, you have no nation.
Exactly, and it's important to note here that the vetting process, with terrorism and stuff like that, that we should be able to protect ourselves with that. We have every right. We have every right to refuse entry, and more importantly, we have a welfare state here. This is another reason why personally, I would be okay with open borders as long as we didn't have any welfare state whatsoever, and there was no ability for anyone, constitutionally speaking, to start voting away other people's rights.
Or how about people bringing their religious beliefs over here and then assaulting Americans and killing them because
that covers
they want us to conform to their beliefs?
I just covered that in the last minute. There's no way that you can violate other people's rights using the coercive force of government. If that didn't exist, then I'd be for open borders. That's fine. But the fact is,
unfortunately, it does. Though.
and I don't want people to be able to come here, bring their values, whether or not it's statism or religious, Islamic, whatever, it doesn't matter. The point is, I don't want people to come here, not assimilate to our values of constitutionalism, small government, things like that our founders created this country for. The purpose of making this country was to protect life, liberty, and property. I don't want people coming here and suddenly just using the governmental force to violate the rights of others. And
they actually use our freedom of religion against us as a tool and a weapon.
Look, they have in my opinion, they have every right to. I'm not anti-Muslim. I have no problem with Muslims whatsoever. As long as you don't want to hurt me or to take my stuff, I don't have any problems with you. I can live alongside anyone.
But you can't be a good Muslim and not believe that Sharia law is ultimate and supersedes all of the laws.
Some Muslims would disagree. It depends on what Muslim you're asking, and some Muslims would disagree with you. And look, I happen to think that.
Well, if you could find a Muslim that truthfully said that they wanted to live under constitutional law and not Sharia, and they weren't using tikret on you, and you know what tikret is?
I do. It's deception.
That's where they're allowed to lie to an infidel to further Islam. Okay, I think a lot of times that's what's being used on us. They're using tikret because when I see the roving reporters on the streets going up to Muslims and asking them which form of rule they would rather live under, Sharia or constitutional, every one of them says Sharia. Okay, so I don't believe that Muslims can coexist. Muslims, Islam, whatever term we want to use for it. Some people say that Muslim is actually a derogatory term, but I don't know why. It means the same thing. But I don't see how they can coexist and conform and assimilate to our constitutional republic's values. I just don't think that any of them can. I do not believe that there's any such thing as a moderate Muslim. In fact, I believe it was the leader of Turkey who said that that's an insult to call him a moderate Muslim, that Islam is Islam, he said. And so anybody that is of the religion of Islam, if they say that they don't believe that Sharia law is ultimate, then they're engaging in heresy and they're becoming a heretic.
So the difference
at that point, the other Muslims say that they should die.
So the point is, Christianity.
So they can't really. I don't believe that Muslims should even be in this country.
Okay, so you and I disagree completely. I couldn't disagree with you more in that statement. You have a freedom of religion. You can choose to. But
I don't believe it's a religion.
And that's fine.
I don't believe that any religion that says you either convert or die is a religion. I believe that's a death cult.
So Islam has yet to go through their reformation. I think we are entering a stage of humanity here, of their religion, where they're going to be forced to have a reformation. They're going to have to choose the people that disagree with Sharia.
The only way they're going to be forced to do it is through force.
No.
And so far we haven't used force.
So
we're not using force to keep them out. We're not. I mean, we've got a Muslim in the White House, and so
I disagree with that too. Look. The point is that you do have freedom of religion, whether or not your government accepts it or not. You may disagree with Islam. You may think it's an immoral religion. You may not even think it is a religion, and that's fine. That's all fine and dandy. The point is that there are, and I completely disagree with you, that your claim that there are no Muslims that disagree with Sharia law. I know several Muslims, myself personally, that disagree with Sharia law.
Are they practicing Muslims? Are they practicing? Do they go to mosques and do they affiliate with other Muslims?
Bill,
because if they do that, they're taking their lives into their hands by doing that.
So there are plenty of Muslims out there who are silent about it. There are plenty of Muslims out there that disagree with the process and disagree openly. The fact is, anybody who's saying a broad swathing statement about like any Muslim believes this or any Muslim believes that, you're claiming something that you can't. First of all, you have no evidence to back that up. You can't. I have
the Quran.
You can't point to a study that says every single
have no infidel or Jew as your friend. Smite them upon the neck. And kill them and either.
I know the text. I've read this stuff myself, and I disagree with that. And I've spoken to my Muslim friends who disagree with this as well. And now, granted,
then those people, if they disagree with that,
and they believe that their religion is in
hardline Muslims, they're heretics,
and
they should be put to death according to the religion.
Welcome to the Bill
Islam.
Akins Show, everybody. Bill, he's rocking the mic. Mack's in studio as a guest here. Sorry, Bill. Look, my point is that you're making a very broad generalization about people that you do not know. And my point is that there are people that are good people, and they are Muslims as well. And you can't go around and say that you don't have the freedom to be a Muslim in America when you say that you believe that you have a freedom of religion and that the government shouldn't get in the way. Now, the issue here is how they practice their religion. Are they violating your rights in the process? Do they want to hurt you? Do they want to take your stuff? This can be applied to religions and statists, applied equally across the board. My point.
The difference is that their religion in the Quran states this. If it did not state
if they disagree with that, if they don't believe that that's correct, and they believe that their religion is in need of a reformation, then I have no problem with those people. Now, if you believe that,
I would agree with that. I would agree with that, Matt.
If you're a Muslim out there and you believe that the Sharia law is the revealed word of God, and you believe that it should supersede the Constitution, and that you should be able to treat non-believers as property, you should be able to enslave them, kill them, rape them. If that's your belief, then I can't live alongside you, and I disagree with that. However,
we're totally in agreement.
Yeah.
We're totally in agreement. We're not at odds at all. Because I agree with what you said before that last statement as well. If they don't believe that, what's written in the Quran, if they do not believe that and they do not subscribe to that, then really, in effect, they're not really a Muslim.
That's not true, though, because first of all, Christianity, we had our Reformation, and Christians were killing people who wouldn't convert as well. So if that's the case, then if you don't believe that you should be killed if you're not a Christian, then you're not a Christian. This was part of our tenet back then as well.
Well, they were not using the principles of Christ, and they were not using the principles of the Bible. That was all about power and control. And you're talking about the Spanish Inquisition.
We had our Reformation. They need to have theirs. Is my point.
Yes, they do. You're absolutely correct. But how? How is that going to happen?
It's only going to happen within their own community, and we can do our part as people outside the community to back them up when they do it. But I don't think it's beneficial for us to say no Muslims should be allowed to enter the country. Islam is not a religion. Blah blah blah. Any other thing? All you're doing is being divisive. What we need to do, instead of giving a big middle finger to all Muslims out there is to send out an olive branch to all those who believe Sharia law is an immoral practice, and help them in the process of reclaiming their religion from fundamentalist.
Well, how do we know if they're lying to us or not? How do we know if they're engaging in tukret?
You will know them by their works. If they're currently advocating against Sharia law, I'm pretty confident that we can trust that they're not a radical Islamist.
If they are advocating against it, yes. But if they're not, and let's say they just come to America, and like some of the bombers did, and they come to America and they supposedly get vetted, and they ask them some questions, and of course within that it's all, do you agree to promise and abide by the Constitution of the United States? And they say yes, and then they come in and blow up a bunch of people. I don't want to see any more Americans killed by us being tolerant. If it takes strong, radical actions to stop more Americans from dying, then so be it. I mean, I'm with you ideologically, but in reality, I think people lie. People lie. And if you've got radical people that come to this country and want to come over here on a green card or want to become American citizens, and then they have plans to kill Americans, it's very difficult to vet those people unless those people, or like you said, have been openly already advocating against Sharia law. And now how are they going to be able to do that coming from a Muslim country when they're supposedly seeking asylum here? They can't have been advocating against it in their own country because they would be killed. So, how do we know that these people coming over are not going to be radicalized just because they say they aren't, just because they say they're going to conform to our Constitution, and the next thing you know, they blow up a bunch of people.
Well, look,
and then, we might kill a few of them, but they killed 100 people in a bombing.
I'm not going to disagree with you that they can lie, and they very well could. But my point is that through the vetting process and through a job application process, you want to be a United States citizen, then we're going to take the cream of the crop out there in the world. I personally think that if we're trying to bring people in, the last places that we should be looking are places that are known to harbor terrorists. There's plenty of other places in the world that we can pull people from. But
unfortunately, that's where the scores of people are coming from because of the revolution going on in Syria.
If you do want to get people in from for example, Saudi Arabia, the person better be able to pass the vetting process, and they better bring something to the table. I don't believe that we're the world's soup kitchen. We're not responsible for lifting everyone else out of poverty. People have a responsibility for their own lives and success. But Bill, we got to run. I have about 19 minutes left in the show, and I have a whole slew of material I got to get to. I really enjoyed.
Well, I got to say, Mac, I think we're on board. I think you and I have a like mind on a great deal of many things. I think the only thing that we kind of disagree on a little bit is the global economy. But as far as our Second Amendment rights, our constitutional rights, even when it comes to immigration, I think we're in agreement on most of these issues. I really do. And it's been a pleasure talking with you.
It's been a pleasure talking to you too, Bill.
So nice being able to have a conversation with someone and it not getting, antagonistic, just having an intellectual discourse, it's refreshing.
Yeah, absolutely, man. This is what this if you've never listened to this show before, this is what I do. I like to bring people on the show, and especially the reason why I kept you on is because I caught on that you and I were going to disagree on a lot of things, or at least I thought we were, and that's why I wanted to keep
actually
you on.
Not as much as what you think, though. Really.
Yeah, I mean, we have some gray areas, some areas where we disagree, in the nuances.
The only main point that I think we disagree on is I just don't see how we're going to be able to compete with people in sweatshops in foreign countries and still maintain our middle class's standard of living such as we're used to today. That's the only thing and if you can enlighten me on that, I'd love to know how we could do that.
My contention is that the free market will find a way. Individuals will find a way when we give them the power to make their own choices and to forge their own path.
But wouldn't that have to be done globally?
No, because even if people in China are still being oppressed and not being able to do, to create jobs, if they don't have the freedom to be entrepreneurs and all they have is the ability to work in a sweatshop, there's no way that they're limiting the amount of minds that they have working to solve problems and to innovate. We have all these minds that are open and free to come up with ideas to make their lives better. And just as evidence of what you did in your life, people here will find a way to do things in their own self-interest. And that...
But then that goes to what you said earlier, but you think that in the future, and hopefully in the near future, we're going to have a technological revolution that will help things.
It'll be a boom in medicine, technology, energy, and we're going to see jobs here like that no one else will be able to compete with because of our innovation. And, that, I think, will surprise the hell out of anyone who doesn't believe that the free market is the answer. Free market is always
won't we have to have a quantum leap jump in our educational system for that to happen?
Again, if the educational system itself was free market, that would produce a quantum leap jump. So I'm for getting the government, getting their sticky fingers out of everything when it comes to education, when it comes to the economy, when it comes to every aspect of your life. I'm for getting the government out. And I don't think that they're ever going to be the solution. In fact, usually when they step in, they're trying to be the solution to a problem they created, and they'll only make it worse. But, Bill, we got to run. It was a real pleasure talking to you, man. And would you be willing to
Same
come
here,
back
Mac.
again
I'd love to talk with you in the future, and I'll be listening to your show. You've got a new convert here, new addition to your listeners. And because you're highly intelligent, it's just been a pleasure talking with you.
Yeah, you too, Bill. You're welcome back anytime. Just let me know, and I'll bring you back on as a guest again, man.
It sounds great, and thank you so much for affording me the opportunity to speak on your show.
Oh, it was my pleasure. Thanks so much. Ladies and gentlemen, that's Bill Akins. Please check out, what was the website again where you can get your bump fire weapons? Or bump fire accessories?
It's the folks that are producing the bump fire stocks based on my patent. I know I transferred the patent to them. So at this point in time, I'm simply a dealer and a firearms consultant for them. So it's not my site, but I'm still very, very closely affiliated with them. And that is Fostech, FOSTECH, outdoors.com.
All right. Well,
and they sell other things besides my bump fire stocks that stem from my patent. They also sell the Origin 12 shotgun and many different accessories, and it's a fantastic shotgun, and it's a tactical shotgun, and lots of good products there from Fostech Outdoors.
All right. Well, guys, check them out, and thanks so much, Bill, for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Mac.
All right, take care. All right, guys, we're going to go ahead and cut to a commercial break. When we come back, I'm going to wrap up the rest of the show. I want to talk a little bit about how the left is wildly looking for ways to dispute or delegitimize the election results, and talk about the House Republicans establishing a congressional Second Amendment Caucus. You guys don't want to go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.
Have you visited the On the Move with Mack Worley store? We've got amazing original design t-shirts, hoodies, cell phone cases, and coffee mugs for sale at OnTheMoveShow.com. Just click the shop link on our homepage. You won't want to miss out on the iHeart Open Carry and Bear Arms t-shirts for only $20 plus shipping. Again, just go to OnTheMoveShow.com and click the shop link on our homepage. Your purchases will help make the On the Move show bigger and better. We appreciate your support. Are you an activist who needs affordable flyers or brochures for passing out literature? Or a political candidate who's looking for business cards, logo designs, yard signs, or vehicle decals? Email me, Latasha Worley, for all your graphic design needs at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com. And don't forget to mention On the Move to get a 10% discount on all graphic design services.
This is Dan Sandini of DaylightDisinfectant.com, citizen journalist, friend of the late Andrew Breitbart, and cohort of James O'Keefe. I listen to On the Move with Mack Worley because the only time he's wrong is when he disagrees with me.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Welcome to On the Move.
All right. I hope you guys enjoyed that conversation with Bill Akins. I certainly did. I had a lot of fun talking to him. It was interesting to have a different perspective on things, and the beauty of liberty is that we do not have to agree on everything. Even if we disagree, it's okay. I want people to have the freedom to have their own thoughts, have their own opinions. I don't want to tell you how to think, what to believe. Especially it seems like the best thing that we can do is to talk rather than scream at each other. Shout each other down, and again, I think that we'll come together through this process of talking. I just don't want to be divisive. The best thing that we can do is to reach out to each other, try to understand what each other believes, and find areas that we do agree on. So anyway, let's go ahead and move into our feature topics here. I want to wrap up this Russian influence in the election thing. Look, one of the points, and Bill said, even Bill was talking about how he doesn't necessarily think Russia is our friend. I don't either. Now, I don't think that they're our enemy, but they are certainly a geopolitical adversary insofar as they have their own interests and we have ours, and those interests sometimes come into conflict with one another. Same with China. They're all looking for their own things that benefit them. They all have their own agenda. We have our agenda, they have theirs. And one of the things that we have right now is U.S. hegemony. We have a control, military control, and we have the threat of force on other nations through NATO and the United States. So that, I think, is one of the reasons why we get put into these conflict-type situations with Russia. Now, the question I have is Russia a bad actor? I think they're dictatorial in nature, authoritarian. But again, I think other countries have their own responsibility. So it's not our responsibility to free every individual in the world from their oppressive government. That's not our responsibility. People have a responsibility for their own situation. If they have no problem being slaves to their government, then who are we to intercede and try to free them? They have to free themselves. That's the first step. You have to take responsibility for your own situation. So when it comes to Russia, they're not really, their government's essentially just a big Russian mafia. That's essentially what it is. And yes, I think that they did try to influence the election. I don't think that they were the reason why Donald Trump got elected. And I wholeheartedly disagree with anybody who says that Russia was responsible for Donald Trump getting elected. Now, it's interesting that the CIA is coming forward and saying that Russia, these hacks were Russia. Yes, I think that these hacks were Russia. The infrastructure needed, the tools needed, and the locations of these places, I think, were coming from Russia. And it's evident that the kind of hacks that were done were state-sponsored. It had to have a national infrastructure behind it. National funding, national sponsorship. So we know that it's a nation doing this. So the question that the CIA asks is, again, the CIA is different than the FBI because the FBI has a different opinion than the CIA. The FBI is saying that it's not certain. You have to remember, the FBI is, it's essentially a law enforcement agency. I mean, that's what it is. So the FBI, they think in terms of criminal standards. Can they prove this in court? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? The CIA doesn't. The CIA looks at things in terms of, compiling all the data and coming up with the most likely intelligent scenario. So this is why the CIA is coming up with this interpretation that Russia is involved in these hacks, which I agree with their analysis. I think Russia was involved in their hacks. But I don't think that there's enough evidence that we can compile and point directly at the Russian government. Because I think the Russian government is using, third parties. I think it was Sandworm or Sandstorm. I can't remember the hacking group that has been taking responsibility. It's been linked to the Russian government. And I think they're basically the cyber door kickers, and then they stand back and let the Russians hack the rest of the way. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. But the point is, if we look at incentive, who had the incentive to do the hacks? It's clear that it is very likely the Russian government. And the way that Vladimir Putin has been playing the game, trying to put the old Soviet Union back together, trying to flex his muscle and come up against the United States, and you know, I think that this is all in the same line of thought. I think that this is all a part of Vladimir Putin's plan. So, I honestly, I don't think that they had as huge of an influence as the media is making it out to be, as the CIA probably making it out to be, but I do think that they did try. And let's not point out, we are not angels here, folks. We're not completely innocent as well. We have been doing the same exact stuff as well. We play in elections all the time. Hell, we toppled dictators underneath the Obama administration in the Middle East over and over and over again. So we're not innocent here either. Every nation conducts intel on other nations. Every nation, at least the big players, the major players, try to influence elections in some ways to their benefit, and try to influence conflicts in some ways to their benefit. So it's no surprise that Russia would want to have somebody in the office, Donald Trump, who would be less confrontational with them compared to Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is very confrontational to Russia. So that's really no surprise that they would prefer Donald Trump. I just don't think that they were as successful. And certainly the answer here is not to delegitimize our elections and dispute the process, dispute the results. Interestingly enough, HuffPo came out with an article that said that this is on the dailycaller.com talking about this HuffPo article. They asserted that federal courts could install Clinton as president because Russia. This is an article on dailycaller.com written by Rachel Stolfos, something like that. Article dated the 10th of December. The courts could legally install Hillary Clinton as president instead of Donald Trump because of Russia's alleged interference in the election, the Huffington Post asserted in a story Friday, seizing on a breaking report that the CIA concluded Russia worked covertly to help Trump win the election. Alex Mojaher, I think that's how you say it, writes in HuffPo, the findings could be enough for federal courts to invalidate Trump's win. Russian interference could give courts legal authority to install Clinton, the headline reads. The development has Clinton supporters and other concerned Americans confused in hot pursuit of potential remedies. Mojaher writes, no clear constitutional remedy exists to halt the certification of the outcome. So I'm curious what you guys think is going to happen with this. Do you think this is going to be a constitutional crisis? What do you think is going to happen? You think Obama's going to step in and say, hey, because we can't figure out who's going to win the election, I'm going to step in. It's going to be my third term. I'm not going to leave office. That would be something else, tell you. I don't think that's possible. I don't think it's going to happen. But I know there's a lot of tinfoil hats out there. So if you have one on, let me know. Personally, I think this is all going to be blown over in about 6 months, and the left is going to try to find ways to work with inside the system, but I could be wrong. This could totally blow up. We'll see. This has never happened before in our history, so at least not to my knowledge. But this is going to continue as we progress the next few months here. I think the left is going to continue to swing wildly and look for ways to avert what they see as a crisis. So. The next thing I want to cover, man, we're running low on show here. I'm running out of time. I want to talk about this House Congressional Second Amendment Caucus. This is an article on blaze.com written by Sarah Lee 6 hours ago.
People would call reporting, investigative.
I don't know where this
reporting.
is coming from here. I got an ad playing. There we go. All right, turn that off. There we go. Okay, so some Republican members of the House of Representatives have formed what they're calling the Congressional Second Amendment Caucus on Thursday. According to reports, the group is being led by Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey with the goal of drafting the sponsoring pro-gun legislation in the upcoming session of Congress. The group released a statement that read in part, caucus members will lead efforts in the House of Representatives to pass meaningful firearms legislation and protect Americans against infringements of the Second Amendment. So it lists all the people who are in the process there. They say the recent election result presents us with a new opportunity to advance pro-gun legislation and reverse the erosion of the Second Amendment that's occurred over the last few decades, he said, according to the Free Beacon. I look forward to working with the new president and this determined group of conservatives to promote pro-gun agenda. So personally, I hope that they actually do pass some pro-gun legislation. I hope that they repeal bad laws that infringe upon our right to bear arms. You all know where I stand on this, and I just want us to be free. I want us to have the government involved in our lives less, and I hope that that we will actually do that. I guess we'll see. Let's see what happens. I'm remaining, hopeful, yet I'm also skeptic at the same time because it's Congress, right? Anyway, folks, that's our show today. I still have a whole lot more stuff I want to get to, but that's the nature of the beast. Live radio ran out of time. Anyway, I want to thank Bill Akins for joining us on the show. I really enjoyed that program, and most importantly, I want to thank you, MacPack. Thank you so much for tuning in week after week. You're the tip of the spear, and I really appreciate your continued support. If you made it this far in the program, smash the thumbs up button no matter what platform you're listening to, whether or not it's Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. I'd appreciate it if you follow us or subscribe on either of those two platforms, maybe both if you're interested. You can like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow and follow us on Twitter @OnTheMoveShow. And again, don't forget to check us out on our website, OnTheMoveShow.com. We got a shop over there. You can check out our original design T-shirts, coffee mugs, hoodies, phone cases. And if you like them, go ahead and purchase them. If not, no big deal. Anyway, thanks so much, gang. And anyway, I look forward to talking to you guys next week. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.